We'll go ahead and call the Johnston City Council meeting to council meeting number 22-08 to order. Cindy, roll call, please.
Councilmember Cope.
Here.
Evans.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Reddy.
Here.
Burkhart.
Here.
I want to welcome everyone that is in the audience with us this evening. If you are here for an item that is on the agenda, we would ask for you to wait for that agenda item to come up and address the council at that time. If you're here for an item that is not on the agenda, there will be an opportunity under public communications to address the council. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and it looks like we have the chair of our park board in the audience this evening. So would you, Angie, mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the agenda approval. Jim, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, we've had a request for one change to the agenda, and that would be to move item 5P to the non-consent agenda.
5 what?
P.
E?
5P is in Paul.
Okay. Any other changes? Council, any other changes to the agenda? Seeing none, with that amendment to the agenda, do we have a motion to approve?
Whoa.
Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Evans.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Reddy.
Yes.
Burkhart.
Yes.
Cope.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on to public communications, we have several proclamations this evening. And because there are so many, I'm not going to read all of them word for word. I would just commend them to you to read at your leisure. But I will work through them. The first one is the proclamation proclaiming May as Bike Month. And it talks about all of the benefits of bike riding and the fact that in our community, we take this very seriously, and we have, extended the miles of trails that we have in this community that can be used for bike riding as well as other recreational purposes. And we now have over 40 miles of trails here in Johnston for our residents to enjoy. I'll also note that we do have the Mayor's Bike Ride coming up on May 14th. And that is always a very popular event. I believe it starts at City Hall at what time? At 11:30? Okay, and we'll all bike as a group. There'll be a route that is laid out for us, and when do we return here then? We finish it there. Okay, and then we'll have lunch there? So it's always a great event. We used to have it on a Friday, and we had good participation, but we moved it to Saturday last year and got even greater participation. So I would all invite you to participate in that and celebrate Bike Month with us. The next one is a proclamation proclaiming April 29th, 2022 as Arbor Day here in Johnston, and I don't think I need to tell anybody on the council or in the audience how important trees are to our community. We work very hard to preserve the trees that we have, to plant additional trees. We had a tree sale, was it last weekend? And we're able to distribute a lot of trees in the community for our residents to plant. So any council member want to add anything additionally to the virtues of trees in our community? We also have, they're not in the order that I have them here. We also have a proclamation proclaiming the City of Johnston's participation in the National Wildlife Federation Mayor's Monarch Pledge, April 29, 2022. And this is the first year that we have participated in this pledge. We've been very involved over the past several years in doing, undertaking activities in our community to encourage pollinators in our community, as well as including monarchs. And this commits us even further to do what we can to make an environment that is friendly to monarchs in the city of Johnston. So does anybody want to add anything to that? I want to thank Councilwoman Martin for bringing this to our attention. If she hadn't, we wouldn't have been aware of it and would not have probably been taking the action that we are tonight. So again, we would just encourage everyone to do what they can to try and to add to the population of monarchs as well as other pollinators here in Johnston. They just add so much to our environment. We also have a proclamation proclaiming May as Building Safety Month. And I know that we have members of our building staff here in the audience. And so I am going to read at least a portion of that proclamation, just so that everyone is aware of what our staff does do. And this is a proclamation proclaiming May 2022 Building Safety Month. Whereas the City of Johnston is committed to recognizing that our growth and strength depends on the safety, economic value, and essential role of the homes, buildings, and infrastructure that serve our citizens both in everyday life and when natural disasters strike. And whereas our confidence in the structural integrity and resiliency of these buildings that make up our community is achieved through the devotion of vigilant guardians, building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, tradespeople, design professionals, laborers, plumbers, and others in the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings. And whereas these modern building codes include safeguards to protect the public from hazards such as snowstorms, tornadoes, fires, and floods. And whereas Safety for All, Building Codes in Action, the theme for Building Safety Month 2022, encourages us all to raise awareness about planning for safe and sustainable construction, career opportunities in building safety, understanding disaster mitigation, energy conservation, and creating a safe and abundant water supply to all of our benefit. And now, therefore, I, Paula Derenfeld, Mayor of Johnston, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2022 as Building Safety Month. Accordingly, I encourage our citizens to participate in Building Safety Month activities. And I have signed the proclamation and dated it today. And Adam, do you want to come up and receive the proclamation? Or did you have something additionally to say?
I do. If you don't
Okay,
mind. Go for it.
you bet.
Good evening, Mayor,
bet.
Council. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening and for the proclamation for May as the Building Safety Month. I just want to go and say that the safety of the buildings and the people who eat, sleep, and work within them every day is important to each and every one of us. In that vein, each week in May, we'll have a separate theme with content that we'll post on the social media sites. So make sure you check it out there as far as, things that will be going on. But tonight I would like to take the opportunity to introduce staff members. For those of you that may not be familiar with them, we've had some turnover. So if I could, I would like to start with Eric Rain, which is our senior building inspector. Building inspector too. He's been here for 15 years in code development. So he has been instrumental in the transition from Doug to myself. So I am very thankful for Eric. Next is Eric Clark. He has 8 years of experience in code. He joined us in December. And then last, but certainly not least, is Sheila Kasanga. She officially joins us tomorrow. So she has been helping us out through the temp service. So she's picking it up well. She's been a shining star, and she will be the new face of the building department. So
hello, everybody.
Finally, I would like to thank each and every one of you for your continued support. Without the support of City Council, the mayor, and the city administrator staff, code enforcement can be pretty difficult. So I just want to make sure I commend each and every one of you for continued support that you offer to us as we do our job.
Well, thank you, Adam. And thank you for all of your hard work, as well as everyone else on staff. And thank you for introducing the other members. I know some of them, but I don't know all of them, and I'm sure that the council members are in the same situation. Should we get a picture with the proclamation and maybe have the council members?
Mayor, I'd just also like to add for Adam to thank him for his leadership, not just here in Johnston, but across the state. We've had some kind of not very good legislation that could have negatively impacted the building codes of every city in the state of Iowa, and Adam showed a lot of leadership on that. And I think we're headed in the right direction.
I think we're there, so.
But just appreciate your leadership.
You bet, not a problem.
Take a quick picture. Had to attend something in the council meeting tonight that required jeans, and I didn't have a chance to change. Thank you very much. And we have one more proclamation, and that is Kites on the Green proclamation. And again, I won't read it, but I'll just share with everyone that Kites on the Green is coming up. This will be the 9th year for Kites on the Green. Next year will be a big year, and every year it just, the event itself, it just gets better and bigger and better. If you've not ever attended Kites on the Green, you're missing out, and I would encourage you all to take advantage of it this year. It is scheduled to be on Saturday, May 7th, and spring will have arrived by then. So we're planning on a beautiful day. We know the wind will be there, but we want some sunshine and some warm weather as well. But it begins at 10 o'clock in the morning, goes until 5 in the afternoon. It's just a full day of really fun family free activities, lots of music. You can bring your own kites. There'll be giant kites, there'll be fighting kites, there'll be not trick kites, but what are they called? Stunt kites. And if you don't have your own kite, we have kite kits for you that are free, and we'll help you build them. And believe it or not, they fly better than a lot of the store-bought kites. So anyway, we would encourage you to all come out. It's a great day. It's over at Johnston Commons at the library, and it's just it's a wonderful event. So hope to see you there. And then finally, on public communications, we also have a presentation from Mid-American Energy for the Trees Please grant program. We've talked a little bit about trees tonight, but let's talk some more.
Mayor, Council, good evening. My name is Kelly Swenson. I'm with Mid-American Energy, joined by Jason Batcham, my colleague, and yeah, a lot of good conversations on trees this evening. Also, Kites on the Green, which Mid-American is a proud supporter.
That's right. Thank you for doing that.
Looking forward to that event. You'll get to see a lot of our employees out there volunteering at the event. So,
And you've been great supporters ever since I think we started it. So really appreciate it.
tonight we're here to thank the community for their continued support and of our Trees Please program. Every year, I think I make it over here and present a check.
How many
for-
years?
You know, I think. Do you know the number?
It's been a lot.
It's approaching 20, I believe,
Yeah.
if I remember right. But so again, Johnston was selected this year to receive one of our Trees Please grants. So we're happy to present a check for $2,000 for trees that can be planted in community spaces across town. And I guess, I would welcome the opportunity for us to help partner with some of your tree planting opportunities.
Great. We'd love to do that. So should we have another quick picture?
Exactly. Let's do it all together.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you. So we're still under public communications. We have gone through all of the scheduled communications. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda? This would be your opportunity to do so. Cindy, do we have anyone online? Okay. We'll move on then to public hearings. And we have 3 public hearings this evening. The first is to conduct a public hearing on the matter of the issuance of not to exceed $1,200,000 general obligation urban renewal bonds of the city of Johnston, state of Iowa, and consider resolution number 2022-101, instituting proceedings to take additional action for the issuance of not to exceed $1,200,000 general obligation urban renewal bonds. And we'll open this public hearing at 7:19. Teresa?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the only hearing that was necessary for our 2022A issuance for urban renewal bonds. We had held those hearings earlier in 2021. However, we needed to hold one more hearing for just a slight increase in costs for this 1.2 million. These are for projects that are already in the capital improvement plan. And specifically, these urban renewal funds are going to be used for the planning and design phase of the 100th Street reconstruction project, which is in TIF 5, and for the Ignite public park improvements. So the part of the Ignite whole redevelopment area that is the actual public park, their improvements was the 600,000.
Council have any questions for Teresa? Hearing none, this is a public hearing on this item. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the council? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing then at 7:21. Do we have a motion to approve resolution number 2022-101?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 4B, conduct a public hearing and consider resolution number 22-104, approving and authorizing execution of a development agreement by and between the City of Johnston and Donovan Development LLC. And we'll open this public hearing at 7:22.
Evening again. The proposed action this evening is to enter into a development agreement with Donovan Development for the Phase 2 construction of their projects on Beaver Avenue. So you just pulled up the vicinity map there. It's on the west side of Beaver. It's a 11,500 square foot facility, anticipated investment of just over $1.5 million. It's essentially a mirror image of their first building, and if you wouldn't mind pulling up a photo of their first building for reference. And it is the same terms generally as the first building, which is a 5-year 50% rebate. That's our general base TIF rebate package for smaller projects. There is a requirement, since it is a spec building, that 25% of the space be finished to an office type interior. So either an actual office, reception area, employee break room, something that relates to those typical office furnishings. The maximum rebate amount is $110,000, and that would be for any increment generated above $900,000. That's the existing value of building 1. They're both on the same parcel. And the agreement is subject to annual appropriation, as is usual. Happy to answer any questions.
Does council have any questions for Adam?
Adam, I have a quick question. When you talk about that 25% needs to be finished for office or some sort of use similar to that, is that checked by city on an annual basis then before that TIF amount is approved again?
The developer is required to fill out an annual certification before any payments are made, so they do that each year for 5 years. It certifies that they meet the terms of the agreement and that they have paid their property tax. We have reason to question meeting the terms. We would ask follow-up information or walk through the building. Typically, if there's an open house, we'll walk through it. We did strengthen the language in phase 2 a little bit, out of a little bit of concern of what interior office finishings meant as described in the phase 1 agreement. So that's something we'll be keeping an eye on this one.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for Adam? This is a public hearing on this matter. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the council? Online, Cindy? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing then at 7:24. Do we have a motion to approve resolution number 22-104?
I move.
Second?
A motion and a second discussion. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Reddy,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 4C, conduct a public hearing on the matter of adoption of plan specifications, form of contract, and estimate of cost for the 2022 storm extension and stabilization project for the Harbor Oaks and Longboat neighborhoods. Consider resolution number 22-112, ratifying, confirming, and approving the change in deadline for submission of bids and posting a revised notice to bidders for the 2022 storm extension and stabilization project. Consider resolution number 22-113, adopting plan specifications, form of contract, and estimate of cost. Consideration of construction bids. Consider resolution number 22-114, making award of construction contract to Raccoon Valley Contractors of Waukee, Iowa. And consider resolution number 22-115, approving construction contract and bond. And we'll open this public hearing at 7:26. David?
Good evening. You have before you tonight contracts for 2 stormwater projects that have been combined from an engineering and bidding perspective. One off of Longboat Court and one off of Arbor Oaks Drive, both of which are in the general same vicinity along Northwest Beaver Drive. Original CIP designated about $500,000 for these 2 projects. Engineer's estimate at the time of bidding was just over $390,000. We did get 4 responsive bidders, with the low bid being Raccoon Valley Contractors at $585,908, or about 49% over. However, they were within $6,000 of the second bid, so we do believe the bids were competitive. In reviewing the bids, the primary difference between the engineer's estimate and the contract bids, in all 4, the areas where the biggest difference we're seeing was in the clearing and grubbing, which is necessary to do the project, and then the excavation, which is the amount of dirt work that's required on both projects. And so based on our review, if we were to delay, if we were to reject all bids based on the cost overage, it would likely push us into not bidding this project until fall, which would mean not construction until winter and into spring next year. Our original hope was to start in 2021, and so we'd be looking at about a 2-year delay from what was originally communicated with the public. As I noted, our original CIP estimate was higher than the engineer's estimate, and as we were preparing for this project, it will be funded by an SRF loan. Our planning leading into that has been for up to $700,000 loan for this project. So the funds are available through that loan to accommodate the higher bid prices. We were, one anticipating there could be some concern with, or could be some higher costs, but certainly, obviously, we're hoping for lower bids. I will, one other thing I would add, the listed resolutions, the last one, resolution 22-115, approving a construction contract and bond. We did not receive the signed contract in time, and so I would ask that you not take action on that, and we will bring that back before you at your May 2nd council meeting. I'll stop there and be happy to answer any questions.
Else have any questions?
So David, we're getting a loan from the SRF program, and then do we use storm utility?
Stormwater utility pays off the loan, yep.
So the fact that this is a cost that's $85,000 higher than we had budgeted, so that, does that mean we'd have to bump back another project or down the road to accommodate that, or how does that work?
I don't think so. We look at, as you know, we come back with a, annual analysis of the fiscal health, and part of that is, truing up the previous year's work, and so this will be obviously an overage. Our Crescent Chase project was under, so they tended to balance, and so we'll look at that when we do our annual review, and, if there's adjustments or other projects need to slide, we'll accommodate it at that time. But it shouldn't impact anything, in our current schedule.
Okay.
Other questions, Council? Seeing none. This is a public hearing on this item. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the council? Cindy, anyone online? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing then at 7:30. We have 4 resolutions, the first being resolution number 22-112. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ready.
Yes.
Motion passed. Resolution number 22-113. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Cope,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Burkhart.
Yes.
Motion passed. Resolution number 22-114. Do we have a motion to approve?
I move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
I think, we're starting to get, this is probably like the 3rd or 4th bid now in a row that we've had above the estimate. And I'm not sure there's much we can do, but I wonder if, to what extent, especially this will have any impact on our CIP, and we need to start looking at that. So I'm comfortable approving this because I think, as Dave pointed out, we have the ability to do this without offsetting other projects in the stormwater utility projects, and these, I think there's value in the project. But I think I would direct, maybe, or urge staff to kind of start thinking about how do we deal with that, so.
Any other discussion? We've had a motion and a second. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope.
Yes.
Motion passed. And resolution number 22-115. Do we have a motion to approve?
Mayor, I think we're going to hold off on that one until May 2nd.
We're going to hold off on that one.
We don't have the contracts back.
Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda, we've removed one item, 5P. Do we have a motion to approve the remainder of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Take up item 5P first under the non-consent agenda. That is to consider resolution number 22-95, a resolution to not remand Board of Adjustment case number 21-13 to the Board of Adjustment for reconsideration. Aaron.
Mark Stanley is a Johnston resident at 6223 Pinnacle Place, and Mr. Stanley offers consulting services from his home, and that home occupation generates approximately 8 to 10 client vehicles each day that he operates that home occupation. After receiving complaints from an adjacent property owner, the Community Development Department issued a notice of code violation to Mr. Stanley, seeking him to limit client vehicles on premises to 4 at any one time, no more than 2 days in any 1 week. The Code of Ordinances does allow any person to appeal such an order to the Board of Adjustment, and Mr. Stanley did file an appeal. The board considered the appeal last fall, but after lengthy discussion failed to pass a motion on the appeal request. The board reconsidered the appeal just this last March, and all members of the board were present for that meeting, where the board ultimately passed a motion to affirm the decision of the zoning administrator by a vote of 4 yes to 3 no votes. Again, what the board affirmed was an order from the Community Development Department to limit client vehicles on premises to 4 at any one time, no more than 2 days in any 1 week. The Code of Ordinances gives the City Council authority to remand any decision of the board back to the Board of Adjustment for further consideration. You don't have the ability to override or direct them to make a different decision, but you can certainly remand it back to them for further consideration. And I do bring all actions of the Board of Adjustment to the council on your consent agenda, so you're made aware of actions of the Board of Adjustment, and it gives you that ability to exercise your remand authority if you so choose. On this item, we're recommending the council not remand the issue back to the Board of Adjustment. Barring a remand back to the Board of Adjustment, the property owner can appeal the decision of the board to the district court.
Council have any questions for Aaron?
I'd just like to hop in here. So this item was in front of us on our consent agenda item last week, and we deferred it until this week. And I think one of the challenges that we have with this situation is, and I think as we've dug into both the code around home occupations and also dealing then with what happens when the zoning administrator makes a decision and how that process is handled is there's left with a lot of questions. I mean, for instance, this is, Cindy's got pulled up the Code of Ordinances, and Aaron did a really good job of highlighting, I think, the background. And, you know, one of the reasons that Mr. Stanley was found by the zoning administrator to be not in compliance with home occupation was because the use of his property and having that many cars parked on his property was not consistent with the residential character of an established neighborhood. But at the same time, if you go down to the way you can use your property, if you look at H, it does allow for off-street parking that can be adequate to accommodate the parking demand generated by the home occupation. So by allowing parking, off-street parking, which Mr. Stanley has has allocated space on his property for that it seems kind of inconsistent to say that by having the parking, it was no longer consistent with the residential character, but we also allow parking as part of the ordinance. And so I think I think that there's really a need for us to review this ordinance. Plus, given the fact that obviously, more and more people are working from home, whether it relates to COVID or just in general, we have a lot of people who live in Johnston, work from home. And so I think this ordinance doesn't really, I think we kind of left with more questions than we have answers. So I think in having conversations with the mayor, our city attorney, some city staff, I think a process that I would like to encourage us to take is first of all, not remand this to the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment did spend considerable time considering this issue and really appreciate their work on this issue, really struggled with the challenges of it. So I don't think at this point it's appropriate to remand it to the Board of Adjustment. But I do think it would be appropriate for us as a city to really review this home occupation ordinance. And so I think we would like to encourage for our next council meeting to have a resolution in front of us that would sort of start that process of revising this code, the home occupation code, that code, and also put in place a moratorium on any enforcement actions, so that if for Mr. Stanley or anybody else who may have a home occupation finding a violation of that ordinance by the zoning administrator, they will not have that any action enforced against them because of that. And so I think it'd be certainly my hope, and I think I don't want to speak for the mayor, but I think it'd be that at our next meeting we would consider and approve that resolution, and so that we don't end up in a situation in which Mr. Stanley is using his property in a way that is consistent with as I read the code, but at the same time, he's being held in violation of our current code. So that's just a little bit of background, so.
And maybe just to weigh in real quickly and support what Councilman Cope has just said. We've had a lot of discussion around this whole situation and looked very closely at the existing code and the interpretation that has been applied to it. And I think we're all in agreement that there's enough vagueness in the code that it's probably time to go back and revisit it, take a closer look at it, consider, not only this case, but other cases that we've dealt with over the years and see if we can't make some improvements in the code. And in the meantime, then put a moratorium in place on the enforcement against any citations that have been issued under the code chapter. So I support, even though I don't have a vote, I wholly support what Councilman Cope here has proposed.
I'd like to weigh in. I do have a vote, and I would agree with Councilmember Cope. I think that that's a great plan of action moving forward. And Mayor, thank you also for your support. And I think what this came down to is highlighted a lot of ambiguity in our code that required our staff to try to make some interpretations that unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on which side you look at this, didn't have a chance to actually be weighed in by actual code and by the city council itself. So I welcome the fact that city council could move forward on this and actually try to clear up some of those question marks that appear. I also want to take one other moment. Aaron, I certainly appreciate the fact that on every one of these board adjustment actions that you bring it about to the consent agenda. I also appreciate you highlighting this one at least a little bit so that we had better understanding of it. I don't mind that it continue in the future to stay on a consent agenda, but I would also ask that you at least bring it to our attention so that we can at least know if that's something that needs to be pulled off. This one had so much background to it that certainly I'm not sure that it necessarily should have been on the consent agenda, but at the same point, you're kind of following the precedent that you've carried on before. So to that end, I appreciate all your effort and dialogue and that communication. I also certainly want to go on public record as saying that the Board of Adjustment deserves a lot of thanks for the numerous hours that they put into it on 2 different occasions. And certainly remanding it, I don't feel like we would give any better direction as to what goes on or what could be done, because I don't think we have new information that has come to light.
Any other comments or questions?
I'd like to add to what Councilman Cope said about updating the ordinance and people working from home and parking, off-street parking. I agree to that. It's a very good way to look at it. Everybody's working from home, but need to be cautious on what kind of off-street parking. Is it a regular car or something, a truck? That will make a lot of difference. So when updating the ordinance, I could really consider that part as well. What kind of vehicle is being parked up off-street? But otherwise, I think what BOA has done for this particular thing, I agree with that.
Would you have a concern? I noticed driving down 62nd Avenue a couple times over the weekend, a large, big Tex branded trailer parked in front of an apartment complex. I presume that's what you would consider not appropriate off-street parking.
Something bad.
I think if you saw it, you would. It's sort of a little bit the eye of the beholder, but I think we always say, oh, that's not true. That's the intended use.
It can block the whole road traffic as well if you pick this big one and.
Right. You got to make sure we don't have any intended. And I do want to say a couple of things as well. First of all, I didn't put Brian up to the consent, non-consent agenda item, but I do feel that any time that there's more, that the staff report exceeds, I'd say 25 pages, but certainly when it runs to 150 pages, it probably shouldn't be on the consent agenda, but that's just my own side point, so.
Any other comments or questions? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the council on this item? Seeing none, we do have a resolution number 22-95, and that is to not remand the Board of Adjustment case number 21-13. But there was also discussion that at the next city council, we would consider a resolution to initiate a change in the code of ordinances, as well as to impose a moratorium on the enforcement of any citations under the home occupation chapter of the code. With that, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Reddy,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 7A, consider resolution number 22-105, a resolution approving a site plan for Notch and Nails Industrial Building located at 5000 Northwest 57th Avenue, PZ case 22-09.
Good evening. Johnston Builders LTD, on behalf of Prairie Engineering Holdings LLC, has submitted a site plan for construction of a new 22,500 square foot industrial building intended to be used as a cabinet manufacturing facility with associated office and associated storage components to the facility. Property is located on Northwest 57th Avenue, just west of the intersection with Northwest Beaver Drive, as Cindy has pulled up on the aerial vicinity map. There, that blue hash mark. The cross streets there at the T is Northwest 50th Street and Northwest 57th Street. This property is shown on our comprehensive plan as industrial, so the proposed use would be consistent with our comprehensive plan. Property is currently zoned M1 Light Industrial Zoning District, and as proposed, it meets all of our bulk requirements, setbacks, lot size, etc. There is no tree removal proposed as part of the site plan. They are proposing to preserve the trees along their southern boundary and to utilize those trees towards as credit toward their open space landscaping requirements. And they still would provide a minimum of 25% of their landscaping required. So that'd be 3 new trees plus preservation would satisfy that code requirement. There is 1 buffer required on the site on the north property boundary. That is a 1/2 of a 60-foot buffer between industrial and residential. The applicant has requested an alternative buffer in this instance, set that alternative being reducing it from a 30-foot width down to 15 feet in width and removing the overstory and evergreen tree requirement, but preserving the shrub and understory requirement. The purpose of that is to, in recognition of 1, there's the right-of-way separating the uses, and 2, the primary items that are probably going to be most noticeable to the residents is the parking lot and headlight glare. So they're trying to protect that low-lying visuals with the shrubbery and understory, and making sure that they preserve good, suitable habitat for root growth by not overcrowding that space with too many plant materials. Access to the site is 2 access points. The eastern access is proposed for passenger vehicles, and the western access is set up for both passenger vehicles and larger vehicles such as semis. The applicant has indicated they're really only anticipating semi-traffic maybe once a week. They may have more frequent deliveries or shipments, but those would be on smaller vehicles. The larger vehicles would probably be about once a week. There is currently no sidewalk on the south side of Northwest 57th Avenue. When the city reconstructed the roadway recently, we intentionally did not put sidewalk on the south side and only put it on the north side. So for that purpose, sidewalk is not required on this property. Property is meeting all their off-street parking requirements. One item of note there is they do identify a future addition on the south side of the building. At the time that they desire to do that future addition, they would either need to provide additional parking or an alternative, seek a waiver or deferral of parking from the city council. But at this time, they are meeting code requirements for parking. Site would have access to all of our public utilities, sanitary sewer, water. Drainage would go down to the south into a dry bottom detention basin that outlets into public storm sewer. Property has adequate fire protection with fire hydrants and that will be sprinkled. And then on building architecture, in the industrial district, we require that 25% of the wall area within 300 feet and facing a public street to be brick, stone, architectural steel, architectural concrete panel, textured concrete block. For this site, they are proposing combination brick stone on that northern facade. However, they are a little short, so there's a recommendation that they amend their building elevations to meet that 25% requirement. So they just need to provide a little extra material there to drive it up to that right number. I did provide notice to the adjoining property owners. No public comments were received in writing. There was one public comment at the Planning and Zoning Commission, generally just regarding the alternative buffer request. I believe the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes addressed that, which were sent out earlier today. And Planning and Zoning Commission did review this and has recommended approval. Happy to answer any questions or go into further detail as needed. And I do believe we have representatives of the applicant available tonight as well.
Council have any questions?
I'm not sure if it's a question. I will make a statement. I appreciate the explanation on why they wanted a 15-foot buffer instead of a 30-foot buffer along the street frontage. But I would disagree that there's not enough space for an overstory tree. My concern is we don't plant enough trees, we don't replace enough trees. I do appreciate that they're saving all those trees in the back, but they're almost wholly elm trees, and so we don't have a lot of diversity. So I would like to make the recommendation to the owners, if they're willing, that they add in 2 overstory trees to the front area, perhaps in the 2 half islands that are in the parking lot.
I believe 2 overstory trees would be the minimum requirement anyway. So really, if council wanted to require that, you have that ability. And the alternative buffer would then be.
Not an alternative, it would just be regular, is that right?
Well, you would be eliminating the evergreen trees then and reducing the width from 30 feet to 15. Because if you kept it at that 30 feet, they can't do the parking lot the way they have it.
Right. And the evergreen trees are already eliminated in this much small space. I totally understand that they would have a problem with those, but I think the overstories can be managed.
Clayton, a couple of questions. First of which, the property directly to the south, where there is that tree line buffer in between it, but it appears, at least on the aerial view, to be open or vacant. What is that zoned currently?
M1 light industrial, so identical to this site.
And is that what they're presuming all drainage flow will go onto as a dry buffer on that location, or are they mapping their own?
There's a constructed swale and dried bottom detention basin on their site. It starts on the property immediately to the west. Cindy, if you actually go back to the aerial vicinity map.
Could you highlight that for me as to where that swale is?
I'm gonna hop up the screen. Starts over here, then it widens out, and the basin's over here, so it flows down here with the storm outlet here.
And it's appropriately sized for an additional paved
It was
area?
designed with this site assumed to be developed, I believe actually at a greater intensity than what they're proposing, so it's properly sized to be code.
Even with the addition, if there was more rooftop? The second question I have has to do with the front-facing overhead door and the potential for larger vehicle traffic. Is it anticipated that a semi or other type of larger vehicle would back into that area? In other words, would they potentially be crossing or inhibiting that 57th Avenue? Or will they be pulling around and circling and then coming back through? It doesn't appear in the building plans to be a pull-through or a drive-through. It appears to have a dock. Is that right? So they'll be backing in there?
Yeah, I believe a vehicle could do either turning movement, but I would maybe defer to the applicant on how they envision the site being utilized with those vehicles, since they have a better understanding of what they'll be receiving and shipping.
Certainly. you mind if they come up?
If you like that now.
My name's Dave Ralph, and I'm the applicant for this site. I also own the building to the west of their Prairie Engineering building. The semi-traffic will, we estimated no more than one a week, but I don't think it would even amount to that much. But if there is a semi, the idea would be to back in off of 57th. And the engineering, Snyder Engineering did some studies for us that if you were coming from the east, you'd be able to pull past the drive and then back in. The drive is deep enough and the dock is fully enclosed. So once the semi got off of 57th, it would be completely on our property. There wouldn't be any truck left on 57th. If you were coming from the west, you'd probably pull past and then maybe use 50th Street to turn back into there. And like I said, my building is to the west there. That was the Prairie Engineering office that I owned, and we occasionally had semi-truck deliveries of different things there, and they would just pull up and back into our drive there, and they didn't have any issues doing that, and we have a lot wider entrance here. But the idea was that the truck would be that the overhead door is like I think 50 feet ahead of where the actual dock is at.
Plenty of room that if someone needed to disconnect a full-size semi or normal-size semi-trailer, they'd be able to do so, and yet the overhead door would still close.
That was the intent. If they had to disconnect, we'd be able to close the overhead door.
Thank you.
The overhead door would stay closed majority of the time. The business is going to be owned by my daughter and son-in-law, and it's a custom millwork commercial cabinetry type business. So most of the deliveries would be on tandem type trucks that the intention would be to go around the side of the dock. And there's concrete in the back. I don't know if that bring up. So there's drive along the west side of the dock area there. All of those deliveries would come back, and there's an overhead door back here that the forklift would come out, unload those, and bring them in to the storage inside the facility. So right now, the business is down in Valley Junction on the corner of 5th and Vine. It's in a building that we own down there, and he's probably had like 2 or 3 semis in this last year. It's most of the material is delivered on tandem type trucks that are side unload. The semi would be like if he bought a piece of equipment or something that came on an LTL type truck and needed to offload it, or if the order was large enough and it was being shipped out of the area or out of state, you might bring in a semi, load all the cabinetry on that, and then shipped out. Most of the trucks would be tandem type lumber delivery type trucks that you see.
Thank you for elaborating on that.
Other questions for Clayton or the applicant?
Clayton, one more last question. How do we proceed if, with regard to approval, if they don't meet the current surface area for those higher quality brick or other finishings, as well as if we wanted to add back in those full height trees?
I can add, what we've looked at is if you look at the front elevation, that elevation shows 4 foot of brick. And what we've done, I worked with the architect today, and we'll raise that up to 7 foot all the way across. And that basically gives us 27%, I think is what it is. So it'd be a full brick with a capped stone on the top of it all the way across the front. And then the rest of it would be typical metal building vertical siding that we'd have on there, so. Oh, yeah. Part of the reason that we asked for that buffer to be reduced is because we're limited on the opportunity for growth in the future to the back. And to get that 30-foot, we would have had to push the building back enough to where it would start to really, we only have 75-foot maximum that we could add. So to try to utilize the property as much as we could, we asked for the 15-foot buffer, you know, plus when the street is there. And so we just felt that that was worth it. But to meet the number of plantings in that 30-foot buffer in that 15-foot, it really starts to get crowded in that area in front of the parking lot and along the sides. And we were just worried that if we had to put in the overstory trees, that it would start to block the whole front of the building. And part of what we were trying to get was just some visibility from 57th so that people wouldn't, would not be able to see the building. So that's where we came up with this layout and doing the understory trees and then planting shrubs in front of the parking lot, and then add more understory trees on the west and side. So that was our concern, and we can look at putting a couple of overstory trees in there, and I just didn't want to plant things and have them die. I figured we'd be better off to try to make it look as nice as we possibly can and get as close to what the requirement was, and that was our
I understand your concern. I did just now look on Google Maps and on Street View, and I do think that with the housing that's across the street on the north side, that they'd like a little overstory tree. It'll help bring that big building, it is quite a big building, more into proportion, I think. I don't think people will not see that building. So I would like to ask that you would go ahead and put those in, and I would like to have that added to our resolution for approval.
our intention to be good neighbors. We've owned the other building since 2004.
And the other building landscape looks very nice, but it's kind of thin on trees. I'm just giving you a hint.
Yeah.
Could use some more trees over there too,
While you're at it.
while you're at it. Hey, Tree City, USA, Arbor Day's coming up.
Back to Councilmember Burkhart's question about procedure. There currently is in the resolution a requirement that they amend the building facade to meet the 25% requirement. Certainly, if you feel you need to be more specific to that, or that you would rather see those architectural elevations come back to you, we can amend it as such. But currently as drafted, it would just be an administrative review that they're meeting the 25%. And as for the requiring 2 overstory trees within the buffer, that would need to just be an addition. So as part of a motion, it would be to amend the resolution to amend the plans to include 2 overstory trees within the buffer. And then we would administratively verify that those are added.
Thank you.
Clayton, 2 other questions real quickly. One, as I kind of do the same street view walk up and down that area on 57th Avenue, I do notice that there aren't any monument signs on any of those buildings, and it may not be appropriate for the uses of those buildings, but if someone were concerned about not being able to see the building or see the naming and signage on that, do we have any provisions in place that preclude some sort of monument sign from being able to be placed out in front of?
They're allowed to have it. It's just a 10-foot building setback or a setback for the sign.
Okay.
So if they wanted to do it, they could.
And on that north,
required to.
I'm sorry to cut you off, thank you. And then on that north elevation, that notch and nail, is that going to be backlit at all? Or is there any, in other words, potential for disturbance via light to neighbors
Signage is just shown for as reference on here. It's by separate permit, so we would review that separately.
Excellent.
And again, I would defer to the applicant, but I might have to look over to Adam or David on, do we allow backlit? So it is possible, but we would review that with the sign permit application.
Okay.
They're capped at 5% of the wall area facing 57th. That's their maximum building signage allowance.
That sign is shown on there, the architect just kind of, they took some license, that sign is way bigger than what they would ever have up there, and I don't know that it would go there. We figured we'd just apply for that under separate permit. They just put that on there as illustrative type stuff. Those letters in scale are like 5 foot tall, so we wouldn't have that big of a sign on there.
While it has, I'm going to direct one more question to the applicant if possible. This has no bearing on my decision whatsoever, but just out of curiosity, what is the either current number of employees that Notch and Nail employs, and then also what could this do either for that employment as it currently stands based on a building this size?
Right now, they have 6, and I'm guessing that in the next 5 to 10 years, that might double.
Okay.
Most of the space is just because of the machinery that's required to make the cabinetry, and then you have to have a place to store the materials and then the finished product. So it takes quite a bit of space just to be able to spread things out and not have to move stuff around. So it's not an issue of 20, 30 employees.
Okay.
I don't see it growing that much with this kind of space.
All right. Thank you.
Council, any other questions? Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address council on this item? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve Resolution 22-105?
I will make a motion to approve this resolution with the inclusion of the requiring 2 additional overstory trees somewhere in the frontage of the property.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ready.
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 7B, consider resolution number 22-109, a resolution approving the preliminary plat for the enclave at Wooded Point. The subject property is located at the southwest corner of Northwest 70th Avenue and Northwest 86th Street, PZCs 21-35.
Mozart Properties LLC has submitted the application for a preliminary plat to subdivide 38.27 acres into 11 lots for single-family detached homes, 67 lots for single-family bi-attached homes, often referred to as twin homes, 3 unbuildable outlots, 1 public parkland lot, and 3 public street lots. Properties at the southwest corner of Northwest 86th Street and Northwest 70th Avenue. The property was recently rezoned in 2021, and previously, prior to development, it's just been used as an agricultural farm field since the annexed into the city. Property is shown on our comprehensive plan as a mixture of medium-density residential and parks and open space. That parks and open space recognizing natural resources in the property, the 2 drainage ways on the north and south, which should be taken into consideration as part of any development. And this is an area of our community that has been identified as needing additional neighborhood park facilities. This property is furthermore within our Northwest 70th Avenue and Northwest 86th Street focus area of our comprehensive plan. A couple of considerations of that section was about balancing the mixture of high-density residential to support a walkable, pedestrian, commercial node on the site that is right-sized to support that commercial node, transitioning from higher density development into the single-family detached residential that exists currently in the neighborhood, And then also preserving environmental features such as the natural drainage ways on the site. As proposed, the use is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Property is zoned a mixture of R2, 1 and 2 family residential zoning district, and C2, community retail commercial zoning district. The C2 zoned portion of the property is limited to the area that would be Lot D on the preliminary plat, which is intended as public parkland dedication. The remainder of the site is zoned R2. Access to the site, all roads within the site are public roadways, and they would access the larger city street network with one access at Northwest 86th Street and one access at Northwest 70th Avenue. That Northwest 70th Avenue access, the location was predetermined when we reconstructed the roadway, and that would involve a new stream crossing there along their northern stream. They are accounting for pedestrian and bicycle circulation on the site. Sidewalks would be constructed on both sides of the streets within the development, and there is an existing public trail along Northwest 70th Avenue that would be retained. They would finish up sidewalk on Northwest 86th Street, completing a gap there on that section of roadway. There is an existing development agreement regarding a public trail that was put in place when the south adjacent development was subdivided. The agreement was that the new public trail, which was originally shown on the south side of that southern drainage way, per the agreement, it needs to be on the north side of that southern drainage way. The developer is responsible for dedicating a minimum of a 20-foot wide trail easement and the grading expenses of the trail. The actual construction of the trail would be the responsibility of the city. So we would need to amend our CIP and then work through design to finalize that. So that would be at the discretion of the city council on whether or not to proceed with construction. The developer is just required to get us the easement, so we at least have the ability to construct it if so desired. And they're showing that starting on the southwestern portion of the property, kind of following that drainage way, and then it generally turns northward. Cindy, can you go to the next page? Between lots 4 and 5, and then that would continue northward up to Northwest 70th Avenue and into the public parkland, which is that Lot D. That alignment was reviewed as by our Parks Department, and they recommended that alignment because it would bring the trail to the park rather than to 86th Street, which would just be sidewalk and doesn't really take you to a place. They felt that this was a more proper alignment, and it helps keep pedestrians and bicycles off of our major arterials, which is the intent of a trail of this type, is to get them more into neighborhoods and into natural areas. Moving on from that, property would have sanitary sewer, water, storm sewer. Those would all be public utilities. There are various buffers that are required on the site. I'm not going to go through each of them. I've outlined them in my staff report. Happy to go into further details needed. The one I would bring attention to would be the buffer requirement between Lot D, which is the C2 zone area, and then the remainder of the site, which is zoned R2. Per code, there's a 50-foot landscape buffer requirement there. The applicant has requested a complete waiver of that buffer in recognition that there's a mature tree line that's going to be preserved for the majority of it, and that it's not actually going to be developed commercially. Staff is recommending that we don't waive it completely, but we do an alternative buffer here, where we do a 20-foot buffer, which is our typical park buffer within a residential district, and only require new plantings in those areas where they're proposing tree removal. Where they're preserving trees, we accept the existing vegetation as satisfactory, but in those areas that they're clearing, we get new plantings to supplement any gaps that are created in that tree line. That would primarily apply to that southwestern portion of Lot D. And then they do have 2 stream buffers required on the site on both the north and south areas, and those areas are intended to be
generally maintained as native vegetation, woodland cover where it's existing, or prairie grasses. So that would be the intent of what you would see there. There is a number of mature trees on the site, and the applicant has done 2 sample areas for surveying of the site to determine what was there. They noted that there was a lot of elm, hackberry, and cottonwood as the predominant species on the site. And there was significant signs of wind damage to the property from our recent storm events, as well as other wind events. They are proposing some tree removal. Cindy, if you can maybe hop up to the page in front of you. That one. So anywhere shown as gray is proposed tree removal. Anywhere shown in green is tree preservation. And then on that southwestern portion of the site where the trail would be, they have called out specific trees that they felt were of higher quality that we should try and work around the trail design. But that would be left to the discretion of the city. When we construct it, we have enough room within that trail easement that we can certainly curve around trees, similar to what we did on Pioneer Parkway. So we can certainly work through those design considerations. We did receive some public comment from neighbors to the south that addressed tree removal, particularly around the southern pond. I do want to note that any tree removal on the dam structure itself is a requirement of the state DNR to make it so that the dam is in compliance with state safety standards. However, the areas along the north side of the pond do not fall within state DNR jurisdiction, so that would be at the discretion of the city council on whether or not to proceed. They have identified them all to be removed, and if the council finds that is satisfactory, removal can occur. Parkland dedication for the site, I've mentioned it several times. Lot D, that area is shown as, can't think of an acreage, a couple acres, but portions of that are the stream buffer and mature woodland, but it does retain about a 0.9 acre, generally flat open area that is available for park facility development in more of a traditional sense. But then we have those more natural areas that our residents can get down and enjoy. Staff and the applicant, we did do a walkthrough on the site last Wednesday, and when you get down in those trees, you do sort of lose the roadways a bit. So, and that was without leaves on. So I think it's an asset we can work with as part of our park system. Stormwater management is the last item I just want to touch on. They are going to have a dry bottom detention basin on Outlot Y, and then they would be reconstructing the existing southern pond to be a wet bottom pond. And that would still accommodate all upstream flows that come into the pond, as well as any new stormwater management standards entering the pond through their new outlet. And I lied, there was one additional item I wanted to touch on. The stream crossing at Northwest 88th Street there, up to Northwest 70th Avenue. The applicant is currently showing that as concrete pipes for our crossing. They are looking to get guidance from council on if we would accept an aluminum structure. That currently does not meet city specification standards. Our Public Works Department is recommending not accepting the aluminum structure and requiring the concrete structure for the stream itself, but the applicant did want to address the council on that matter and seek direction from you. I threw a lot at you right there. Happy to go back, answer any questions, go into further detail. We do have representatives of the applicant in the audience, and I did send notice to adjoining property owners as well. Planning and Zoning Commission has recommended approval.
Thank you, Clayton. Council have any questions for Clayton?
I do. Can you walk me through the buffer on the north? How did you phrase it? It's phrased in here as the double frontage.
Yes.
Buffer plant schedule, and then the north half 50-foot buffer plant schedule. so what I see is this buffer, it's on page 18 of the full package.
5 or 6. I think it's this one.
Yeah, so it's difficult with that one that was just on the screen of knowing where exactly the street 70th Avenue is and because it just shows kind of the plant material floating out there in the, I think it's down a page or two. Yeah. Up. That's the one. It doesn't have very good reference to 70th Avenue there. So what I see here is a buffer that extends along the property line. If you go north of that property line, that's where we're gonna have, where we have our trail. And then there's street curb, right?
Correct.
Okay. So all the landscaping that is proposed in this double frontage is happening within, I don't know, 10 feet of our sidewalk. And then there is going to be a, what should we call it, a ditch? Waterway
Drainage.
between there and the backs of these houses.
Yes.
But there's no proposed lands. I mean, I'm a little concerned about all the landscaping being shoved up to the north. Plus, there's no overstory trees in there at all. It's all crab apples and some shrubs. And while I want to give credit to the developer, he's picked a lot of native plant materials that I like very much. He hasn't got much for variety in terms of overstory. Is that because of the grading? They can't put them in on that slopes, or can you?
Code doesn't require them.
Just doesn't require it.
It requires shrubs and understory trees for a double frontage buffer.
Is there a reason that we can't have landscape in this big open waterway ditch?
Not that I'm aware of off the top of my head. I'd probably have to take a little more look at it, but we probably could work with the applicant, get right tree, right place. I think the intent of the buffer there is to try and get them all up there in groupings so that they do what they're intended to do, which is to buffer sounds, buffer visuals. If you start to separate them, it opens more opportunity for sound and visuals to get through, which undermines the purpose of a buffer.
And
But
this,
certainly, maybe there's reason not to do it that way.
I appreciate the buffer. What I don't appreciate is the open ditch. I just think that that's uninteresting. But I do appreciate the quality of the plant material selected, except for the fact that the only trees along this stretch of the entire road are crab apples, which is not very interesting. I'm not ready to propose anything different. I'd like to hear what the rest of the council says.
Any other questions, council?
I'd like a little more detail on this aluminum thing versus the concrete thing.
Yeah, I'll let the applicant speak to what they're requesting. Fortunately, our Public Works Director is unavailable this evening to give us, we're not seeking to actually make any approvals on that. That would happen at the construction plan approval phase, which, assuming preliminary plat gets approved, you would then see construction plans, which gets into more detail. That's when we would look to make any official changes, but they're just looking for direction on if council is generally acceptable for it. I'm not going to pretend to understand it completely myself since I'm not in Public Works, but I can say that Public Works is recommending not accepting the aluminum pipe because it is not in our supplemental specifications.
Have we ever approved it before?
We did I think it was steel in Crosshaven. So there's the pond in the Crosshaven development, Valley Parkway, where it crosses over that stream. We did do steel there, and we are starting to see issues there, some rust. It is different material, so it will interact with salts differently, and aluminum is I do know that aluminum is supposed to react differently and supposed to be a better material. But again, I'm not gonna try to go into too much detail there because
is not my area of expertise.
Okay. Before we ask the applicant to respond on the steel versus concrete and on the trees, are there any other questions for Clayton? And then if there are questions that arise that the applicant also might want to address, and we're doing this more efficiently.
Mayor, I do have one question for Clayton regarding that Lot D. I know that is the area that is, you said zoned commercial, but also is designated potentially as Parkland dedication. Realistically speaking, I can't remember exactly how it was phrased when we had the discussion about rezoning those areas, but can you kind of lay out for me, what would the potential of a commercial development be on Lot D if we didn't accept it as parkland? I mean, clearly the trees would not be there, but realistically, can a commercial building even go in that area with regard to the ditch that's traversing through it?
It'd be very limited at best for commercial suitability. I'm going to stop short of saying it couldn't happen, but I think in current market conditions, there's better sites out there that are more easily developed, that this would sit vacant for quite some time. There's significant slopes they would have to deal with. There's mature tree cover, which will remain after portions of it are removed. There's stream buffer requirements, which take up a large portion of it. And then you have your building setbacks that had it in there. I mentioned you have 0.9 acres of area that's outside the stream buffers. That's generally flat. That's including areas that are within the building set between the setback line and road that are not available for buildings. So realistically, the building pad is only a couple thousand square feet. So you get a small standalone commercial structure at best.
And outlet Y is actually all zoned residential?
Yes, that's the R2, and that would be owned by the HOA and maintained by the HOA.
Okay.
Along with Outlot W and Outlot Z.
Thank you.
Other questions for Clayton?
Parking.
Yes.
Is that something we could look at on this? Are the roads wide enough for parking? And
All roadways are designed to allow for parking on either the north or east side of or south or west. We don't allow parking on the north and east side. We do not require any additional parking for 1 or 2 family dwellings under either current code or even proposed new code. We just don't address it for that level of development. Where you would start to see parking addressed in more detail is when you get to triplexes, so 3-unit or larger multifamily dwellings.
Other questions? Does the applicant want to comment on the aluminum versus concrete and the trees?
Good evening, Melissa Hills, Civil Engineering Consultants, 2486th Street in Urbandale. With regards to the aluminum steel or the aluminum plate culvert that we would like to use, the advantage to using that is that we would do we would drop it below the grade of the channel and allow that to silt in and actually become a natural stream through the culvert itself. And then we get some mitigation credits for that area by doing that. And it's also a lot less expensive than doing the twin 60-inch culverts. So that's kind of our reasoning for going that route is to get some reduction in the mitigation costs and also slightly less cost with the pipes. So I have a lot more detailed information I can get you from our supplier. I don't have any of that with me tonight, but if you guys want more information on that, I'd be happy to get that to you.
I have a quick question, sorry. Quick question for you. Aluminum versus concrete. Which has the better tensile strength? Which is better strength in some amount of strength that it can sustain the tensile strength? Which is better, aluminum or
I'm not a materials expert, so I can't really speak to that. I'd have to look at the specifications.
Okay, so concrete has a thicker thing, aluminum could have a smaller one. I'm not particularly sure that if that aluminum will have enough tensile strength to withhold that thing. So thickness of the aluminum could matter most.
Well, and it matters what type of backfill is used, and there's a specific backfill that's required for the aluminum versus the concrete. So there's different things you would have to do to get that same durability and stability for those materials.
I have no decision either way, this or that. I'm just trying to understand the long-term durability or how well the tensile strength is. If the aluminum, if you put, and if somebody walks on it, it collapses for not enough strength to hold it. That's my concern here. So that's why I'm asking this question. So
These types of structures have been used on several public and county roadways in Iowa. Yeah, our suppliers that gave us a bunch of different examples of where they've used it in other locations, and I'd be happy to share those emails with you.
yeah, it'll be good to know the tensile strength and how well it can handle traffic on that.
Yeah.
Good.
I
Thank
think that's all addressed in those
Very good.
emails.
And this is an item, this is a decision that is not required tonight. It'll come up at a later point, and maybe that would be the opportunity.
Yeah,
to-
with the construction plans.
To look at, have more, you could distribute information amongst the council members about the value of it, or how it's been used effectively, or the benefit you've outlined.
And I think the desire tonight is just to get some general feedback on, are we willing to further consider this, knowing that Public Works has recommended not doing the aluminum? If council thinks there's merit in continuing these conversations, we'll continue on. That's what we're looking for feedback on.
I don't think I know enough information at this point to say that one way or the other. From my perspective, I'd like to see the uses of it. Maybe there's an appealing kind of, it sounds like, it allows for maybe a better water flow because of how it works.
Yeah,
And
there's
so
some
maybe
there's
that's-
some environmental benefit to doing the dropped invert because it allows us natural stream bed going through the crossing. And that was one of our main reasons for wanting to do that. And I've got all the extra information on the structural properties back at the office, and I can get that information to you.
I think, Clayton, what we're hearing is that we're open to having the conversation. We want to learn more. I think it would also be a real benefit to us to have Matt share his concerns. So that we hear what they are.
And from what I heard, it's that you said there's two 60-inch concrete pipes being proposed, but this aluminum channel might be, like you said, less restriction if it's all one piece to serve, so that there's not going to be that hindrance of the piece in the middle that gets trash caught on it, et cetera. So I agree that this doesn't have to be a decision now, but I think we should be open to hearing more about it.
I agree.
And then I'm the one who brought up all the questions about the landscaping. Tell me how the drawings, I'm sorry, I didn't look. What are you proposing for ground cover of these open ditch areas?
I believe that there is a seed mix that was specified for the ditch that's already there, and we would just match what they've done previously so that it's contiguous and similar, so.
So it's a mix that would get regularly mowed?
I think it's, I don't know what was prescribed for the ditch here, but I don't think it's something that's mowed every day or on a weekly basis. I think it's allowed to grow in between mowings.
Okay. I guess my concern is we just planting crab apples along that stretch, and then there's I don't know, 125 feet before you get to the backyards of these homes. And it seems like
Well, okay.
it could have some landscaping in it to make it look more like an amenity. I totally agree with the thoughts about, creating some buffer of this residential community from 70th. but I also feel like there should be a more natural variety of plant types. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I understand your concerns. The problem with this, this channel is actually that it's serving 100 or more acres of drainage. And so when you get a 100-year storm, you need
The
that
whole
full
width.
and you wouldn't want to have landscape plantings in
Obstructions.
there that would get
Right.
mowed over by floodwater, so.
So I agree with that. So I've changed my comments to just saying, I would like to see, like, for every lot that is along that area, which I counted, there's 8 residential lots along that area. I would like to see at least 8 to 10 overstory trees within that narrow strip of planting that's up to the north along the trail. Does that make sense?
Okay, and could that be in lieu of doing some of the understory?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just asking for more variety in height and species.
Okay, I think that's something we could probably accommodate. I'll have to talk to my client, but I think that's something we could probably do. There was also a question about parking. With these bi-attached units, these townhomes will have a three-car garage and a wider driveway. And the single-family homes are 100-foot lots, so they'll probably have larger garages and driveways as well. So I think there'll be plenty of parking within each home site, as well as the on-street parking on the one side. Was there one other question? I thought there was one other thing, but.
Thank you.
Council, any other questions for either Clayton or the applicant? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the council on this item?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. My name is Jim Hoyt. I'm a resident of the south side of the Enclave development, and if I can use this mouse.
No. Jim, you can tell me where you're wanting to see.
Oh, okay. If you can go along the south side of the property line, yeah, right there, all the way along from up on Peckham, all the way south to 86th Street. So that whole area is part of the Creekside Estates Homeowners Association and the property owners. So I have 2 things I want to speak to. One, well, first of all, we are not at all opposed to this development. We think it's a great use of the property, a great use of the land. We think that it would be a good neighbor to have as far as us on the south side of the property. But there are 2 issues I want to speak to. And unfortunately, there were 3 of us that were going to be here tonight. One lady who is a former Planning and Zoning commissioner had a last-minute emergency, and the gentleman who was going to be here hasn't returned yet from an out-of-town business trip. So you have me. But again, we're not opposed to the development. We're familiar with the city's Thrive 2040 plan. We really compliment the city on your efforts to maintain natural environment. We've heard a lot about trees and shrubbery and so on today, and I think that's a key part of what I want to speak about. First issue is the proposed bike trail. And I'm not quite as familiar with this, the rationale for this, because one of the other people was going to speak to it, but I'll try. So there currently, as you know, is a bike trail along 70th Street that runs, well, all the way north. Actually, it ends up almost at Walmart, if you want to go that far, on 70th, which isn't in the Johnston city domain. But it runs to 86th Street, then continues on east toward Camp Dodge. So there is a bike trail now that runs from Peckham to 286, which is the area that we're talking about. So the proposed bike trail, or the one that's been in the city plan, is about 2 blocks south of that bike trail. It runs all along the property line. The bike trail itself would run roughly along the property line, I think, Clayton, just a little bit north of it probably. and then around the pond, then north and out to 86th Street. So it starts about 2 blocks from the bike path that's on 70th. It ends about 1 block from the bike trail that's on 70th. So 2 things about that. One is it a good use of taxpayer dollars to spend money for that bike trail? The second is the owners, and I think you probably have the petition from 50 signatures, more or less. The owners along that street or along the property line are very concerned about the change in privacy they have and the aesthetics. I could tell you also that Brio is very opposed to this because of where their property sets in proximity to where this bike trail would start, and probably would require some tree removal. And I think, Clayton, that depends on when the development when it actually happens. Is that correct? And that is a green space, as I see here, but there would probably have to be some tree removal. I'll stand corrected by Clayton if that's the case. But I think both the developer who we've spoken with and the property owners would prefer that they not have to go to this, that this expense wouldn't be incurred. You may hear somebody speak later tonight who we did at the Planning and Zoning Commission last week, who will talk about the importance of this to the city's bike trail system. I'll go back to my comment about how close this is to the trail that already exists. And in terms of whether it affects the property values or not, who knows? I will tell you one thing, or suggest one thing, as far as the new property owners with these lots that will be purchased and homes will be built on. If the trail doesn't happen for a couple of years, I can use the experience of my daughter who lives in Urbandale, who had this very thing happen. The bike trail came in her backyard after they had bought the property, built a home. Now every homeowner along that bike trail has had to build a security fence. They have children, they have people going on the bike trail, walking, and so they've had that additional expense. So that's one piece of what I wanted to talk to. The one I'm more familiar with is tree removal on the north side of the pond. And I realize the dam itself is under the auspices of the DNR, and what has to happen there has to happen. I understand that completely. On the north side of the pond, which is not DNR controlled or under their jurisdiction, maybe we can go back to that map again. So if you see the red area around the pond, Clayton, I believe the proposed, or all of the trees in that area would be removed.
Everything shown in gray is proposed.
Okay. What about the red and the red-gray area?
Yeah, it is the red gray.
The red, anything that's got the gray overlay, like where the gray overlays on the red.
Right.
Those are tree removal areas. The areas that are just red, that is actually where we have mitigated wetlands. And there isn't any trees there, it's just,
Right.
it's water.
Yeah. I live across from that, so I'm familiar with what she's talking about. I guess our feeling, the petitioner's feeling, is that that area where some of those trees would be removed down to the pond is a pretty important wildlife habitat. Deer, raccoon, badgers, if we consider them as wildlife, endangered species of owls, fox, and the removal of all of that would certainly affect the habitat because the pond area is going to be affected as well. I guess our request is that we could receive support from the city council to minimize the removal of trees in the area that's solid, that's has the gray overlay. There are large cottonwood trees there that we watched go through the derecho without any significant damage. You don't just grow those overnight. And in addition to that, if the trees have to be removed close to the pond, can there be some kind of a planting of new trees that would help with that area to protect? Number one, the view from both sides of the pond, so people aren't looking at each other's, essentially your backyards. So again, we're not opposed to the development. We think it's a very good idea, very good use of the land. Just want to put those two issues out there that the petitioners, why the petitioners submitted their their question and their desire to the council and the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I'm open to any questions you might have.
Any questions for Jim? Don't see any, Jim.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address the council on this item?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Angela Butler, and I live at 6820 Northwest 93rd Court. I've been a proud Johnston citizen for 25 years, living in the exact same place, which is just west of this development. So I also serve as the chair of the Park Advisory Board, which gives me a little bit more knowledge about the trail system in Johnston. Obviously, the trail along Northwest 70th is considered a commuter trail. It's built primarily to help increase non-vehicle traffic across the city. It's there so that we can get people to use alternative means of transportation to get from one place to the other quickly. The trail that we're discussing here is in the development agreement is a residential trail or a recreational trail. It's meant to help citizens get to places so that they can walk, exercise, bike in a more natural environment than what Northwest 70th is. So the history of it is obviously the developer had this trail along the south side of what the ravine or the waterway is. And through the development agreement that the developer came to City Council and signed, is the trail would then be put on the north side. It's in the comp plan, it's in the developer agreement that there would be an easement there. So this is kind of a problem in which they created themselves that they now want you to fix again. So I would encourage you that the easement stays so that we can create a trail eventually if we want to. It's important because along Northwest 70th, there's a number of older developments, I guess, that don't have access other than going to 70th. But there's a whole bunch of houses south of us that can't access the Northwest 70th trail. So their way to get to this proposed park and this area, and even to the Northwest 70th trail, would be through this trail easement that would help them get there. So as the Parks Department has had many discussions about this, and I know at Park Board meeting a couple of times, we've also discussed this, how important it is to keep the trails in the residential areas so our residents can access them. It's important for the city, it's important for residents. Trails and parks increase the value of the city and properties. So as a citizen and as part of the Park Board, I encourage you to leave the easement in there and not remove it. Do you have any questions for me? And thank you very much, all of you, for your service. I, as a volunteer of the city, know it's hard, so I appreciate it.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you, of course.
I don't really have a question for Angela, but I just have to, I think you make a really good point. And I think, Mr. Hoyt, you make really good points as well. But I do think that the purpose of this trail is different than the purpose of the trail along 70th, and that we have trails that are really sort of almost like transportation to help like people who are wanting to ride their bike to a school or, looking for, they're getting from point A to point B. But then a trail that really is close to trees and wooded areas it really gives you a completely different experience. And we have some really good trails like that in the Beaver Creek Nature area, or the trail that runs along the Greenwood area, Hills area, west of 86th Street. And I know both Councilperson Martin and the mayor and I serve on the Trails Advisory Committee, and that they've really identified these types of opportunities to have trails in wooded areas that we need to really promote and use as an opportunity. So I think that's one reason why I support the what you're saying, is that the easement and the need for a trail here makes sense, and that's why I support it as well. So
Thank you, Angie.
May I ask another question to the applicant?
Sure.
For this? Based on Mr. Hoyt's claim and plea for preserving the timber around the pond, I just need to make sure that I understand your maps accordingly. If all of that timber were to be preserved, am I correct in assuming that lots 5, 6, 7, 8, half of 9, as well as parts of 65, 66, and 67 would all have trees on them still? Is that correct?
So the gray area, if I'm kind of outlining it with my finger here, would be this. So yeah, you'd lose basically lots 9 through 5.
Okay,
And then we also have a roadway, an access roadway here, in a hardened forebay, a hardened spot here to clean out this forebay. And this forebay serves 100+ acres worth of drainage. So we need to have that access there to be able to get in there and clean that out on a regular basis.
Could that access be between lot 10 and 9 instead?
No, because these are bi-attached. I think that's actually.
Oh.
I think that might be the shared wall.
Sheer wall.
And another item on that, the access roadway is a combination with the trail. That section of trail would be thickened and reinforced to support heavier equipment, but it would serve a dual purpose because we're not expecting maintenance equipment on a very regular basis. So it was made sense maybe to duplicate or use that trail section for 2 purposes.
Clayton, whose responsibility will it be to maintain that, did you call it forebay? Is that right? Is that the city's responsibility?
HOA, homeowners
Okay.
association.
Will they be contributing then to that portion of the trail that would have to be strengthened to be able to, I thought I heard you say that the city would be responsible for the trail. However, if we made it
That section of
hardened.
the trail would be the developer's responsibility, and that would go in on day 1 with the development because they need that for their pond maintenance. But the remainder of the trail would be the city's responsibility.
Okay.
And, just to reiterate, all we're getting at this time is the easement for the trail. The actual construction is a separate decision for the city council. That would probably come up at time of CIP discussions because we don't even have it in our budget currently for construction. So just because we get the easement doesn't mean we have to construct the trail. It just gives us the opportunity.
But the portion of, there will be a portion of the trail that is constructed immediately.
Correct.
Okay.
Generally, the section between 4 and 5 westward to 9, 10 along the south side of those lots. And that would serve as the maintenance roadway for the pond.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Anyone who can answer this question, I'm going to plead some ignorance here on my tree varieties and what constitutes quality. I clearly know, as I faced it in my own yard, ash is not what we want as far as that goes. So as I look at that south sample area, I see a very small portion of the extrapolation, though, being ash. Talk to me a little bit about, any one of you who are trained in this, about the elms, the maples, the cottonwoods, and the box elders, as to why they should be removed, other than because they stand in the way of lots 9 through 5.
Well, in order to get the maintenance road for the pond, and in order to build the lots, we have to grade in those areas. So the trees have to come out. There's a grade change that's going to happen there. So even if we try, you would lose the trees even if we tried to save them, because there would be enough construction going on around them that it would compact the root systems. They wouldn't survive it.
Even if you, so that's because of developing lots 9 through 5, or that's because of even developing lots 10 and further away to the west? In other words, what action is going to cause that root compaction and the ultimate death of those trees, whether you take them out or whether they die because of the consequences?
The trees have to come out so we can build units there.
I understand that aspect of it. But what I'm saying is, if we don't approve the plat for 5 through 9, you wouldn't build units there. And so consequently, does that mean those trees would live, or is there enough activity on the rest of those lots that they still would die?
In order to put the street in, you see where the street is, and that goes right through the gray area. So the gray area extends clear up here. You have to keep in mind that we're trying to save everything in these green areas, and that's a substantial amount of trees.
So so the question I guess I'm asking though is, if the street goes in, would the trees in 9 through 5 die?
Yeah, well, if we build units there, yes.
No, if you didn't have buildable lots there, would they die? Because of the activity on 65, 60, to prepare 65, 66,
Depends on the size of
67?
the tree and it depends on how far away from the grading it is. If you have a 30-foot tall tree and you grade within 15 feet of it, you're probably going to cause compaction to the roots.
Okay.
Councilman Burke, I appreciate what you're saying. I think what he's trying to say here is, there's four or five lots together. And if we excluded any kind of construction on those 4 or 5 lots, and we're going to save a couple dozen trees, there's a value to those lots though, right? The developer has counted on.
But the development won't happen if we lose them.
Right, the developer is counting on I don't know if it's $50,000 a lot or whatever it is for those lots. I will say this, as we move forward with our reviewing our landscape ordinances, we are trying to encourage as much as possible with developers to incentivize ways that they will save more trees on a project. So what we're trying to do is have conversations early on about what we require in terms of landscaping to go back in and what we would credit them for landscaping that they preserve, to try and get to the point where some of these more valuable wooded areas can be preserved. I'm not sure it's possible in this case because of the cost of those lots is already worked into the developer's proposal. I mean, if these 4 lots that we're talking about are worth, I don't even know, $50,000 a piece, it's $200,000 worth of value. And if we cut all the landscaping that's required out for the whole site, which we would never do, still wouldn't add up to $200,000. You see what I'm saying? If there's value in those forested areas, how can we encourage the developer to save them? Well, he's already cost estimate this whole development. And even if we took all the landscaping out, I don't think it would add up to what he'd lose from losing those lots. Although it's something that we should continue to discuss and be part of these discussions.
Other questions? Actually, we were at the audience. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to address the council on this item? We'll give you one more shot, but we usually don't. We try and discourage redos.
I just have a question about this area on the northern pond where we've been talking about tree removal. Just so you know, there are some 75 to 80-foot cottonwood trees that exist along here. So a question I have is, the service road is here?
The service road starts on the top of the dam here and goes around down to here. And that allows them to clean out the forebay and allows them to access the outlet structure.
Okay, so could there potentially be new trees planted in the area between the service road and the pond? So, thank you.
That would be in an area where there would be, during a 100-year storm event, it would be underwater, so, and most vegetation, most quality trees are going to survive wet feet, so.
Does this forebay currently exist, or is this something we're having to add because of the addition?
Something we would be adding. There is an existing wet pond there. This this dam that exists here has never been permitted through the DNR, but it would have to be in order for us to proceed with the development. And in doing that, we have to remove the vegetation from the dam and reconstruct the outlet structure and make this a pond that will last.
So is this development is what's driving the need for the forebay and the enhancements? 'Cause
Well,
this is where the
we're required to do the water quality, and the forebay is sized to handle the entire drainage way coming into it, which
Yeah,
is
so what's the drainage, how, the drainage way serves a larger area than just your property.
about 100 acres.
Okay, okay.
It starts up in the Ridgedale Heights development, just north of the high school. So the new Ridgedale Heights Park, which will be coming up in a few years, that will be the headwaters of this drainage way.
And the
reference.
Betts Pond, which is in the Ashton Point area, that's tributary to this. There's a few other larger ponds within this system that all drain to this drainage way and through this pond.
So the design of this pond is picking up requirements based on the whole neighborhood's worth of drainage, and therefore it got bigger.
It did have to get slightly bigger so that it was sized to accommodate everything coming at it.
And that's part of the, new development. It has to follow with new regulations.
This pond does have a history of bad water quality events, excessive vegetation growth. So the hopes is this forebay will help to settle out some sediments and other impurities of the water to help improve that water quality and create a more pleasant visual experience, as well as the environmental benefits it provides.
Else have any other questions or comments? We do have a resolution before us, resolution number 22-109.
I'm sorry, I have one quick question. So we have this in front of us today. This is the preliminary plat, is that correct?
That is correct.
And what will be if this is approved tonight, what's the additional consideration that this project will receive again before
The next step would be the construction plans for public improvements. So that's when we would come back with detailed plans for the roadways, water main, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, the stream crossing, aluminum versus concrete pipe. That would come back at a later date.
And then would there be, and then maybe the final plat as well?
Yeah, then they would construct it, and then we would see then you would see the final plat. And then once that's approved, then they could start home construction.
Any other questions? We have a resolution for consideration. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion.
Will the motion include the requirement of additional overstory trees along the northern property line, at least one additional overstory tree for every lot that is adjacent to 70th Avenue? Oh, in place of the existing understory tree, we're going to upsize to overstory trees, at least 10, because that's a good number.
Councilman Cope, do you want to amend your?
Jim made the motion.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
I'm good with the second, yeah.
My other comments on this is that I am going to be voting in favor of this, although it somewhat is sad that we couldn't save more of the existing landscape. What happens here is that as we try and keep a handle on our water quality in Johnston and in the whole state, it means losing some very valuable landscape. But we need to start protecting our water and doing a better job with that. And then I encourage us to plant more trees. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I think Councilperson Martin makes a good point. This is a part of our community that's been undeveloped for a long time, and I think a lot of people who sort of thought, wonder what's going to happen here. And obviously, we don't see what the buildings look like, but I know we had a discussion, I think, when this was earlier, and I think not only the council, but the citizens have a high expectation that this will turn out to be a very nice part of Johnston. But it is, it's a very heavily wooded area now, and clearly it'll be less wooded. I haven't spent a ton of time on this to sort of get a handle on, do I feel 100% comfortable with the wooding, the trees removal, but I trust that we've done kind of the best that we can in this situation, so.
Any other discussion?
I guess the petition for not having the trail or whatever, I want to make sure that that was heard. We did evaluate it, and, I'm still going to stick with my motion to go forward.
I think my sense from the discussion that took place up here is that it's important to keep the easement in place. Gives us the option to build a trail out in the future. There isn't any funding right now. There isn't any, it's not in the CIP, but at least it maintains that opportunity. And that there is a sense that trail would serve a different purpose than the trail on 70th. And the more recreational trails are important to our residents as well as the commuter trails. And so this maintains that option for us in the future. Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Cope,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Burkhart.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 7C, consider resolution number 22-102, approving the preliminary plat for Eagle Ridge Plat 2, depicting the subdivision of 3.5 acre Lot 1, Eagle Ridge Estates into one commercial lot, one lot for single-family detached development, and 6 lots for the development of a by-attached housing. Aaron.
Homes by Advantage has submitted a preliminary plat depicting the subdivision of 3.5 acre Lot 1, Eagle Ridge Estates into one commercial lot, one lot for single-family development, and 6 lots for the development of by-attached housing. And the property is north of Northwest 66th Avenue and east of Riverbend Drive. It's shown there on the overhead in blue. And Cindy, if you would open up the preliminary plat. Should be the second attachment. That one right there. It'll take a second to load. That'll maybe go down. That works. The commercial lot is Lot 1 here. Lots 2 and 3, those are for by-attached homes. Lot 4 would be a single-family home, and the rest of these lots, 5, 6, 7, and 8, are also by-attached housing. There are no buffer requirements between the proposed by-attached homes and the existing north adjacent R1 100 uses. However, there would be a 50-foot buffer requirement between the proposed commercial lot, which was Lot 1, and the north adjacent homes, as well as between the commercial lot and the by-attached houses to the west there. The by-attached homes will utilize shared driveways, and when combined with the single access for the single-family detached home, 4 driveway accesses are proposed at Riverbend Drive. At the rezoning last fall, we heard from some neighborhood residents who would like to see the number of access points reduced to 3, and for the southernmost access to be moved further from the intersection, as they feel the residential access is too close to the intersection and will cause some traffic conflicts. In response to these concerns, the developer agreed to pay for a traffic study to look into the access spacing and safety issues. The study revealed the distance between Northwest 66th Avenue intersection and the first access drive serving lots 2 and 3 meets both SUDAS requirements and the requirements of our city code. SUDAS is the more restrictive requirement, mandating at least 75-foot separation, and the proposed distance between the intersection and the first access drive is 100 feet. The speed limit in the neighborhood is 25 miles per hour. The traffic study found the 85th percentile speed was 26.9 miles per hour, or 1.9 mile per hour greater than the speed limit. Guidance developed by Iowa State University's Institute for Transportation suggests a concern is present when the 85th percentile speed is 5 miles per hour or greater than the posted speed limit. So this, again, this is under that area of concern or level of concern. The distance of the first access from Northwest 66th Avenue is sufficient to allow a vehicle traveling on Riverbend Drive to safely stop before it would impact traffic exiting from the first access drive, even if the vehicle is traveling on Riverbend Drive, even if that vehicle were exceeding the speed limit by 10 miles per hour. So again, the posted speed limit is 25. If somebody were traveling at 35 miles per hour, there's sufficient distance between that intersection and the first access drive for the vehicle on Riverbend to come to a stop. The study did express some concerns about access to the commercial lot on Northwest 66th Avenue. However, that's an issue that will be reviewed at a later date when a site plan is submitted for that commercial lot. When the Planning Commission considered this item last week, the traffic study generated further public comment. I did my best to summarize those comments in the staff report under the public comments section. I've also asked for Molly Long from both Infrastructure and Environment, who authored the traffic study, to attend tonight's meeting to help answer your questions if you should have questions about the traffic study. With regard to sidewalks, it's probably better illustrated on another one of these pages. I'm not sure which one. A 5-foot paved sidewalk will be installed with development of each lot. It's shown there on the overhead. And the developer is responsible for a parkland dedication fee to be paid prior to approval of the final plat. There will be a stormwater detention basin constructed in a northernmost portion of Lot 1, and that basin will accommodate stormwater for both the residential and commercial portions of this project. For preliminary plats, we typically only notice the adjoining properties. For this project, I sent a notice to residents within 320 feet of the properties. And we did receive some additional public comment today. That was forwarded by email late this afternoon, but I've also distributed a copy at the dais shortly before the meeting. I'm also certain there are members of the public in the audience here tonight that would wish to address the council on this plat. This one actually is fairly simple. The traffic issues will require some discussion. If you have any questions for me, I can answer those now. Otherwise, the applicant and their design engineer are in the audience with us tonight if you should have questions for them.
Council, have any questions for Aaron?
Aaron, quick question. The site number 2, I think, right, corner of 66th and Riverbend. Where's the road? Where's the driveway for it? Where does it end? Riverbend or 66th?
Oh, yes, it'll be accessed from Riverbend Drive. All of the homes will be accessed from Riverbend Drive. There will be no residential accesses from Northwest 66th.
That lot number 2 is a two twin homes in there?
That is a twin home. Lot 2 and Lot 3 is a twin home, and they'll utilize a shared drive, shared access drive. That's Roger's pointing at the location of that access right there.
I see. Okay.
Aaron, can you take a look at, if you see the intersection here of Northwest 66th Avenue, you can see the sidewalk there on what would be the east side. The sidewalk seems to be pointing south. Is there a crossing there across 66th Avenue going to the south, or do they have to cross west and then south?
That's a good catch. I believe they'd have to cross west and cross to the west and then.
Yeah, there's not going to be a crossing on that side. They're going to have to show the sidewalk connecting to the west because that'll be controlled to get down south, right? Yeah.
Yeah. That'll have to be amended.
Aaron, it's my understanding that this will be the last time for any kind of public input on this development. Is that correct?
It'll come back to you at the final plat stage, but at that point, really, it's more procedural. So in terms of if you want to impose controls on these access locations, this is the time to do so.
And just so as I read it right now, there currently is one of those controls is already built into the resolution, correct? That the access drive serving lots 2 and 3 is to be positioned no closer than the 100 edge line, the 100 feet from 66th Avenue, right?
Right, we don't require accesses to be shown on a preliminary plat. The accesses are shown on this preliminary plat, and that first access, again, is located 100 foot from the intersection. And typically where the accesses would be shown is when the builder comes in with a site plan for the lot, and they show where the access is, and our building department staff review to make sure that the access meets the code requirements. Just to make sure that that first access doesn't shift, I've placed a condition for approval on the resolution that states that that access is cemented in place there at 100 foot from the intersection.
And I remember when we did the rezoning, there was a requirement that said no more than 4 entries onto from this area, and that, I presume that still is.
That's still in effect. That's part of the development agreement that was signed with the rezoning. Technically, there could be as many as, what do we have there? 2, 3, 6, 7 accesses to Riverbend Drive, but the developer agreed to utilize shared accesses for the bi-attached homes. And we put that language in the development
No
agreement
more
that
than
they
4 or
could,
something like
yeah,
that.
they're limited to 4 accesses.
I have a question for Molly, if it's appropriate.
I do as well.
Yeah, I think all traffic study questions are probably best directed to
Let
her.
me see if
so.
anybody else has any questions for you, Aaron. Any other questions for Aaron?
One last question for Aaron. The buildings themselves cannot be placed over the sewer line, is that correct?
Correct.
So the first 2 buildings on lot 2 and 3 are gonna be at the back of
Yes.
that lot. And then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, they're all in the front.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that was clear. Okay, thank you.
What is that easement that runs through?
It is a storm sewer easement. It's a historical easement that was granted to Camp Dodge back in the 40s. And there's a clay tile that takes drainage from the camp through this area here out to the river.
Any other questions for Aaron? Molly?
So Molly, there was I think a reference made by Aaron about SUDAS requirements, and that the SUDAS requirement for an intersection or a street like this would say that the first access point should not be more than closer than 75 feet, correct? Can you talk a little bit about what the heck SUDAS is and how those are developed?
SUDAS is the statewide urban design So what happened was a lot of the cities in the state got together and everybody was kind of having their own specifications and their own rules for things, and they joined together, and so they made this joint specification, which was different than what the DOT used because the DOT held things to a little bit higher standard because of federal regulations and all that sort of thing. So this is kind of the statewide municipal code that pretty much most communities follow.
And it was based on, would they, I presume, input with traffic engineers and data and
All
looking
types
at
of engineering.
accident type?
Traffic's just one small section of it. It's
Okay, right.
pipe requirements, the road width requirements, the design requirements for clear zone, all that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I have several questions for Molly as well. The first of which being, as I look at the traffic study that you posted or wrote, figure 5 of that provides the SUDAS kind of spacing or really distance for the first driveway away from an intersection. And I'm left to extrapolate that it is your understanding, and I know you even state, I think, above it or somewhere near that figure, that the River Bend Drive, if I'm using the right terminology here, is considered a local street. Is that 66th Beaver also deemed local?
No, it is deemed, It's either a collector or a minor arterial.
So help me understand that table then a little bit more, that if it, I'm sorry, did you,
It's a minor arterial.
it is a minor arterial? So as I interpret that chart, and this is where your expertise will come in handy in better explaining this to me, I see the distances between minimum intersection clearance, in other words, A, which is between the intersection and a driveway, at the least being 145 feet, at the most, which I don't think applies in this instance, an agricultural area of 300 feet. Is that correct? So if that 66 Beaver is considered a minor arterial, and the first driveway then would need to be 145 feet away because it's turning into a residential area?
Currently, the road requirements stay with the road that it's on. So it's a local residential road. So it would be, the local box would apply to the accesses on Riverbend.
Okay, because the driveway is on a local road.
It has to do with speed, it has to do with use, it has to do with, number of driveways that someone would encounter on a local road. It's just a lot smaller size road, and it's a lot calmer road as opposed to a minor arterial or collector that's moving lots of traffic, lots of places.
Okay. Going to how you collected the data, and Aaron mentioned something along the lines of that it is believed that someone could be speeding in excess of 10 miles an hour over the speed limit on Riverbend and still be able to safely come to a stop in a passenger vehicle, I'm assuming? And that would be heading which way? Toward that intersection or away from that intersection? In other words, they just passed through the intersection, we're heading on Riverbend, they would still be able to stop at that first?
That is what we looked at, because that was the concern of people coming through the intersection and not being able to see that first drive. So that's what we evaluated. A 25 mile an hour speed would be even less distance than what, yes. So a car traveling 35 mile an hour should be able to come to a stop by that first driveway coming through the intersection.
And when you did a speed check, and I know you offered to do a follow-up on that, and I didn't ever hear if city staff took you up on that. But that speed check then was measuring the speed of vehicles that were rounding that corner and heading, what I'm going to call up kind of northeast on Riverbend Drive.
So the radar that we installed was located on the
Northwest corner, okay. Okay, yes.
There's a light pole there that we attached our.
And so speed measurements were taken just as it passed that in both directions?
Correct.
And you didn't keep track of traffic direction?
It's speed by direction.
It is speed by direction. Okay. And was there a difference in speed passing north versus south?
I will have to look. We have all that raw data. I seem to remember there wasn't a big enough difference to really split it out.
Highlight it. Sure.
But I can double check that.
I think that's the conclusion of my questions regarding the traffic for now. Thank you, Molly.
I've got just one additional question here, Molly, I'm looking at page 3 of the traffic study. So,
Sorry, I'm looking for page numbers.
It's the
Sure,
one
they
with
were on
the,
there.
so I'm looking, so the thing I'm looking at is, it's got the dials that show the number of cars, it looks like,
Yes,
with the 1 and the 1.
yes.
So I just want to make sure I understand this. So it shows it on the Northwest 66th Avenue and Northwest Beaver Drive PM, if you're going northbound, because that seems to be the major concern here is northbound traffic, that we have, I want to make sure I'm understanding this, 117 cars making a left-hand turn, 688 cars going right, and 14 going through the intersection.
Correct.
And that's in the afternoon, and in the morning, it's 70, the number 4, and 326. So the number of cars that go straight through is a pretty small number of cars. And obviously, it's still local traffic of people going into the neighborhood.
Right, yeah. We estimated the ADT of the road, which means both directions north of the intersection, to be at about 230 cars per day, vehicles per day. That's over the whole 24 hours.
Obviously, this is I think one of the challenges of it is this intersection of Beaver and 66th is, there's a lot of angst about that intersection. And some of the angst is also now, obviously now that some homes are going to be built just north of the intersection. And so it relates to that. And I think that angst is understandable, certainly. And then the issue is whether that applies to this project or not, so.
One of the things that we talked with Matt Greiner about is that now that we have the traffic count for this intersection, we can adjust the traffic signal timings, especially maybe in the PM peak when we don't want people beating a light. So if we need to give more time for that movement so they make a safe movement, we can do that now that we have the traffic count.
Okay, great.
Any other questions for Molly? Does the council have any other questions before I ask if there is any comments from the audience?
I have no questions about the landscape.
Mike.
How disappointing.
My only comment would be, I'm at a point, quite frankly, I'm thankful for the public input that came at all. I'm always grateful for that. I don't necessarily feel like we've had adequate time to be able to consider all of these aspects, including the planning and zoning minutes that came about late this afternoon. We still got responses, and Molly, thank you for working hard to get responses at 4:30 this afternoon to Aaron or to Dave, I guess, and forward those on. We then saw another comment or forward from Aaron regarding another proposal. I don't know what the appetite of the rest of the council is, but I certainly am interested and actually would make a motion to table this at this point in time. I don't feel like I'm at a point where I can actually make this decision appropriately.
We have not heard from the audience yet. Was that a motion?
It is a
or-
motion.
Okay. A motion has been made. Is there a second?
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
I don't support tabling it at this point. And I think first of all, I'm not sure what the purpose will be gained by tabling. And so maybe Brian, you, or councilperson Burkhart, what is it that you're seeking to gain by tabling it?
Well, one, some time to be able to digest the information in a more thorough manner. And I think that is the biggest reason. Now, I would be willing to withdraw the motion for now. In part, my second is, and I realize that this is precluding public input by doing this table now, I want to make sure that the neighbors, as well as the general public, has as many opportunities as possible to weigh in on this. I am not necessarily convinced that if we do this preliminary platting and agree to it tonight, we will get any further say with regard to this more than and greater than what we have. And so consequently, I do feel like everyone needs their time, and I also just need to be fully aware of what that is going to entail. And so that's why, at least at this point, I'm standing by my motion.
And I think this is sort of a judgment call, like a lot of these things are. And I think I recognize your angst about, and I share it. I mean, when we got this item and there was a discussion in the staff report about what happened at the P&Z meeting, and we had no minutes of the that always frustrates me. When, to me, I like to have, when we have a document, when we have an item, I like to see those minutes attached so we can follow that discussion, because that's an important discussion and there's lots of things that happen there. To me, the issue that the neighbors have that I've heard of, and it would be good to maybe hear that more from them, the other issue that I've heard raised from them is this concern about the access point, that first access point being too close. And the current proposed access point, and the access point is required by the staff report, is 100 feet. And at this point, I've not seen any scientific data or rationale for why it needs to be any closer than 100 feet. We have our city expert, Molly Long, who's been doing these traffic studies for the city of Johnston and does traffic studies for cities all over the area, who has pulled the data together and said, looking at this, 75 feet is sufficient. And so I think that's, to me, that the data shows, I understand that the neighbors feel very strongly that it needs to be more than 100 feet, but I haven't seen any scientific data point showing me that it needs to be more than 100 feet. And to me, I think we have to make these decisions not based on because somebody has a concern, but because that's a concern that is backed up by science and data, and not just sort of the emotional moment. And I'm not saying that this is an emotional reaction, but I have not seen, and we've talked about this issue a lot and how many access points there should be. And I think also additionally, I do have concerns. I think the developer has legitimate concerns about the more of these access points you combine together, there's a lot of side effects that result from that. You have neighbors that now share a driveway, which means they got to figure out how they're going to maintain that. And if you think that neighbors always get along, we just covered an item about an hour and a half ago where that is not the case. And so that is a significant issue. And I think I think that the developer and frankly the neighbors have done a really quite good job throughout this process of trying to work through a long list of issues. And I think for the most part, they've resolved all those issues except one issue, which is the driveway entrance point of that first area. And again, I just have not seen enough data from my perspective to believe that 100 feet is insufficient. And second of all, I think that if you ask the developer, is it important for the developer to move forward on this project tonight, he can outline to you the reasons why he believes it is. And so I completely am sympathetic to the desire to table this item, but I just do not support it because I don't believe that we're going to gain any more information in 2 weeks that we won't have in front of us tonight.
But Councilman Burkhardt, I agree with you, the frustration of getting the last minute email and trying to, regurgitate that before this meeting. That wasn't very fair. So.
The same thing as what he said, the last minute getting the information, trying to understand, digest in the past couple of hours, and we have a day job as well. So we need to finish that before we actually do all of these things. So my concern is that the information we received in the past few hours is not enough time for us to go through the whole thing and do that. And that was only why I agreed with you that time was not enough for us to digest this whole information. But I also agree with Tom that we have been working on this for quite a long time. And I don't believe we have seen anything new that's changed since then. So that's my take on this.
Any further discussion?
I guess, I know this is kind of, I think the hard part is that we're almost trying to make a decision without hearing from both the developer. We haven't heard at all from the developer about how a delay would impact him, or hearing from the neighbors, because maybe I'm completely wet with my argument that there's no science or data to back up the 100 feet, and I look forward to hearing that. So to me, I would like to have an opportunity to hear the impact from the community, knowing that, and then we can make it.
I agree with you, Councilman Cope. The problem is we have a motion on the table. So if the proponent of the motion wants to withdraw the motion so that we can hear those comments, we can certainly do that.
I would be happy to do so, because I don't want to stifle anyone from being able to share their thoughts or opinions. However, the motion is coming back by me. And it is because while we can weigh what they say in public input, the document dump that occurred within the time span of this is not sufficient to be able to assess all of this to make an educated decision. So I will withdraw the amendment, or excuse me, the motion at this point in time.
Just to be clear, the email that was forwarded this afternoon was a response to an email we received today. So it's not something staff's been sitting on and then decided to deliver it.
No, I understand that. I understand that. The process itself it requires.
The lack of the minutes from the P&Z was something I think that made the decision-making. To me, that's a document that I rely on as part of anytime you've got a staff, especially when you look at it, you say, okay, people came to the P&Z and voiced concerns. I want to understand what that concern's about. And the vote of the P&Z was not unanimous. So I want to dig in and understand that. So I think that's a legitimate concern. We have seen now those minutes, and but I'm not sure we're going to learn anything new from that. But anyway,
I must admit,
I'm not trying to talk you out of your motion. I just want to hear. I want to have a deeper understanding.
Okay, the motion has been withdrawn. Let's proceed and see if we have any comments from the members of the audience.
Oh, thanks for letting me speak. My name is Jason Krebs. I'm live in Eagle Ridge Estates on River Bend. I'm a lifelong resident of Johnston. I grew up here, not far from you. My folks still live up there. So I guess I had one thought or one question on the procedure, because we were not notified of the planning and zoning meeting last week, and neither was anybody else that we contacted that lived within 300 feet. So I don't know if that was a procedure thing that's supposed to happen, but we were not notified. And we're not really concerned about the congestion of the intersection. We're concerned about the safety. So I don't know if you can pull up the report again, but there's a speed table on this report that I'd like to reference if we could. Well, first of all, right here on bullet number 3, where it says the speed limit is 45 along Northwest 66th and Beaver, that is incorrect. It's 35. So if they can't even get those simple facts correct, I'm not sure how much reliability we can have in this whole report. But and so if you go to the speed table, I'm not sure where it's at, maybe page 7. So they said that the average speed in here, yeah, this table here, is 26.9. So that's almost 30 miles an hour. That's 200 feet to stop, not 100 feet. So I don't know how they can say it's safe to stop within 100 feet going 26 miles an hour. Well, at 25 miles an hour, it's 115 feet. So even just getting into the neighborhood, going 25 miles an hour, you don't have enough room to stop. And so going into the neighborhood, coming up Beaver, it's 35 miles an hour. So you're coming across the intersection, going 35 miles an hour. The only way that they can say you have enough time to stop is if They back that distance up and start from the beginning of the intersection. The beginning of the intersection to that first driveway, before you go through the intersection, it's 255 feet to the driveway. And it takes you 250 feet to stop. So as soon as you enter that intersection heading north, you've got 5 feet to make a decision whether you're going to hit the brakes and stop before you run out of space to stop in time for that driveway. If you've got a car coming up behind you at 35 miles an hour, they're probably not going to see that car backing out, or the kid on the trike coming out of the driveway, which you're stopping for, they can't see. Additionally, there is a neighborhood or a sign for the entrance to the driveway, which impedes vision of, well, especially people turning off of 66 turning right into the neighborhood. You'd not be able to see the driveway or any kids coming out. If you're at a complete stop, you may have enough time because you're going slow, but if it's green and you just go, you're going 20, 25 miles an hour. By the time you get around that corner, you're going to have less than 100 feet to stop. That's a safety concern. Let's see. I think those were my main points. The final point is we're talking about 100 feet or 40 feet. They could move the driveway 40 feet north, and that would be a significant amount of distance when you're trying to stop a car from hitting a child or running into another car that's backing out of the driveway. That 40 feet stopping in 25 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour makes a huge difference. Huge difference. So thank you for listening to me.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address the council on this item?
Michelle Dennison. I live at 6787 Riverbend Drive. I share Jason's concerns about the stopping distance and the visibility with the sign. I know, Molly, that you responded about that today, and the site triangle. Can you explain that?
Site triangle?
Mm-hmm.
Well, why don't you finish making your
Okay.
comments? We're going to ask Molly to respond to.
Okay, yeah, so I was a little unclear on the site triangle. The response from Molly said that they needed to maybe trim some of those trees. But if you look at the intersection, and I go through there every day on my bike and in a car, and it doesn't appear to be, clear that you could see that driveway. It's, maybe the street is going to change once they get the sidewalk in. But it's not clear to me that you could see a car backing out of the driveway. In addition, the developer had said at the planning and zoning meeting that the layout number 1 was the only one being considered, but that people would have room to turn around in the driveway so that they wouldn't have to back out, but that's not reflected on the layout. And lastly, where the camera was located was further down by the intersection of Eagle Ridge and Riverbend Drive. And, people are slowing to turn onto Eagle Ridge or coming out of the neighborhood going slower than a car that was going northbound from Northwest Beaver Drive into the neighborhood. And so I am concerned that the speed study that was done with the camera in late January, early February, didn't reflect what the traffic is, where that driveway would be located.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council on this item? Molly, do you want to respond to some of the concerns that were raised?
All of the things the first gentleman said, so remind me if I don't address it. The stopping sight distance is measured from the distance where the driver's eye can see how far the driver's eye can see. So he is correct in saying that the measurement comes south of 66 through the intersection. There is a clear path of sight to that first driveway location from that distance that are on the tables. So basically the road kind of curves. There's a point as you're approaching 66th on Beaver Drive that the road starts to curve, and from that point you're measuring from the middle, you know, where you sit in a car and where you see. So you're not measuring on the lane, the curb line, you're measuring from that middle lane, from the middle of the middle lane. And so that's where the furthest point south of the sight distance is measured from. And the sight distance is, it's not just a SUDAS thing, it is a AASHTO, which is the governing design guide for roads for the whole United States. It's based on many years of research, driver perception reaction time, vehicle stopping times, accelerations, decelerations. All that is taken into account in this table. And this table hasn't changed, and I mean, it's just the same.
So Molly, so the fact that the stopping point, or the point that where the driver, if you're driving northbound on Beaver Drive, heading straight on River Bend,
yes,
the fact that the sight distance is 200 or 225 feet, and so that is actually on Beaver Drive before you get to 66. That's sort of normal. That's not a unique or inappropriate type of situation.
No, I mean, because if the stoplight wasn't there and you're just driving down a road that didn't have the light, because I mean, that's what they're saying as they're driving into the development.
It's green, it's a green light, you're right.
You would have that same distance as you were just driving down the road. And then as far as the turning of the right turning vehicle, typically people turn between about 15 miles an hour. If you're going much more than that, you might be up on, it's like riding with my 14-year-old daughter. But no, typically the speed between 15 and at the high end 20 is the speed of a right turn movement. So even then you're not going at really high speed, and you still have that distance to see that drive. The sight triangle is kind of a take on the stopping sight distance, and there's a whole set of equations that go into that sight triangle also. So it's 18 feet back from the edge of traveled way, and then you measure that distance, that 18-foot point, you measure to the middle of the lane that you're trying to establish the sight triangle. And then there's an equation that takes into account the speed of the vehicle, and then you come that distance back along that road, and then you have the triangle. So what we use sight triangles for is to make sure that there's clear line of sight within that triangle. So I did it a couple different ways. One was making that right turn movement. If there was enough, if that sign was outside of that sight triangle, it is outside of that sight triangle. There's a couple trees that are closer, but there are a couple trees that are closer to the curb that could impede the side of that driveway, but the sign itself does not. And then I also did it for a backing maneuver out of the driveway, and how far that person could see in that triangle. And again, that sign doesn't block that vision. There's those couple trees that are kind of within that site triangle. So we like to keep that clear. We use it at the intersections, like when you're actually stopped at an intersection, we want you to be able to see from both directions vehicles approaching in order to make a safe decision. And the speed location, typically we try and locate the radar a far enough distance away from a stop conditioned intersection. And that's why we placed it a little bit further north into the development, because we didn't want to take the chance that a vehicle could stop in front of our radar, because that skews the data. So that's why we placed it further north. There is a light pole that we could put it on between numbers 1 and 2 on the screen. On the
And then there was, maybe there's one of the questions was about the turnout, and that's
Turnaround, yeah.
turnaround. I don't, maybe the developer could talk about that.
Before we,
any other question?
I do have one for Molly.
Okay.
Molly, you mentioned though, and I hadn't even really considered it, that Riverbend Drive jogs slightly once it gets past, or in the second half, heading north, I should say. Do any of those proposed driveways, do we have any concerns about southbound traffic? In other words, folks wanting to leave this development from Riverbend and not being able to have, at 25 miles an hour, adequate stopping distance for a vehicle that presumably will pull across, back out all the way from Riverbend to head south as well.
So it's kind of a catch-22. You provide the sight distance, you provide the comfort, people go faster. You provide curbs, parked cars, driveways. People tend to be a little bit more uncomfortable in that situation, and you drive slower. So when we're talking about residential neighborhoods, even though we're worried about the sight distance coming into the neighborhood, by the time that you get into the neighborhood, you should be watching all the other driving cues. And, you know, you're in a neighborhood, there's a driveway every so many feet. So
What you're trying to say is that the more driveways that there are, people tend to drive slower because of those kind of I can't remember the word you used, but it's like it's a pressure point or something.
yeah, it's a comfort thing.
Right.
And
It
you know,
interrupts
that
your
bend,
comfort, right.
the bend in the road there probably
Right.
had something to do with traffic calming, so that people weren't just
Traffic calming, yeah.
100% shooting down that road with no friction, side friction.
Would they be able to, if they're heading south, would they have enough stopping distance to be able to stop from that first proposed, or the northernmost driveway?
I haven't looked into that.
Okay.
The other thing that is happening between Eagle Ridge and 66th Avenue that's not typical is that this pavement is wide enough for 4 lanes of traffic. Typically in neighborhoods, we're 37 feet at the most, which is a 3-lane right at the intersection. Higher classified road. So this is, drivers already have the space to go. But on the other hand, drivers also have space to maneuver around these 4 driveways because it is wider.
A quick question, Molly. Page 28, this says speed limit is 45 miles per hour along 66th and Northwest Beaver. I'm not sure it's 45, it's 35 on that road. I'm just curious, is maybe a typo in there?
Yeah, I think it was 45 a few years ago, and
It was a few years ago, but not.
Most of the study was not based on the speed of that road. All the speed consideration was from, there was not any actually calculations based on that 45.
Well, let's say speed limit is 45 miles. Maybe you want to change that wording, so that'll be better. Thanks.
Any other questions for Molly?
I guess there is one public comment on Zoom if you want to take that.
Okay, sure.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Patty, we can.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Mayor Deerenfield and council members. This is Patty Cumbera with 6749 Riverbend Drive. A lot has been shared already with most of my comments from the folks present. Sorry, I couldn't be with you tonight. We do have concerns about, and even, and Molly, thanks for your responsiveness, by the way. You have been, quick to answer things. Councilman Cope, as far as the discussion of enough time, I think the amount of time and materials, it is important to put that timeline out there, and that is this P&Z meeting was last Monday, April 11th. The materials for your meeting tonight were posted on Good Friday, 5 days after the P&Z meeting. It was for a meeting of the city council 1 week later. The inclusion of minutes, which could not possibly be approved minutes shared with you in a 1 week time period in this case. The first version of the minutes shared today were not complete and representative of the entire discussion from last Monday. So that presents concerns. I don't know if everybody got edited minutes of what I shared back once I saw the minutes. I don't know really what you have seen, what you haven't seen, because there has been a lot of communication traffic, not within the packet distributed to everybody on Friday. Some of that my own doing, because we've been sharing information since, as we had time to frankly celebrate the holiday weekend, travel, and try to get feedback on a report that Molly did respond quickly as to how Aaron had formed the question to her following the P&Z meeting. I do have concerns over the whole speed thing. Molly, I think you just stated, and let me know if I didn't capture this correctly. I would tell you that I believe the neighborhood's largest concern of safety is incoming traffic into the neighborhood. We've stressed this many times. We were able to get Molly and staff and legal counsel and engineers on the phone, or in person and on phone, and in February. But we've been stressing the incoming into the neighborhood, the northbound. And yet, I think, Molly, you just said that really not a lot of the speed was measuring that. To be clear, Beaver Drive, Northwest 66th, going east from that intersection going west, those are 35 miles per hour. 35 miles per hour. I don't think it's uncommon that people are going 5 to 10 miles over the speed limit, if any of you travel that route. But northbound, east and westbound is 35 miles an hour. Our concerns are not inside Riverbend or inside Eagle Ridge Estates neighborhood to the point of the most of the data captured, 26 miles per hour. It's a 25 mile per hour neighborhood. Not surprising. Our concerns are this frankly conundrum that we have of minor arterial roads that dump into a local road. I have a question for anybody who could answer this in the room. Do you have an example in Johnston that you have 3 arterial roads that dump into a residential? And if so, can you share that with us to give us comfort that this is not a problem? I'll finish my comments before somebody answers that. So again, it's pertinent that you understand it really is, all of that activity. It is a traffic nightmare. The day after, actually 11 a.m., the day after the P&Z meeting last week, there was a significant car accident. So yes, our angst is about that intersection and its proximity to our neighborhood. And that's even our new neighbors we care about too, as well as the existing neighbors. It is as we talked about, the 3 lanes leaving the neighborhood, 1 lane coming in, 1 lane funneling down from 2 coming from the south. And actually there's kind of 3 now with the wonky right turn going east. And the answer was, well, that road's so wide and wider than normal that you should just be able to scooch and maneuver and swerve if necessary. Swerve is my word. That doesn't seem like a plan for safety, but maybe that's acceptable. Again, this lot was developed for commercial development. It made sense it was wide. It made sense it had 3 lanes coming out, 1 lane going in. It's now residential. We raised the question of parking for our new neighbors. Where are they going to have their guests park? How does that affect the congestion at the entrance of the neighborhood? That hasn't been addressed. Just kind of reviewing my notes here to make sure I've kind of hit the highlights. I know it is no longer a motion on the floor to give this more time to adequately gather the information. And so I would support that to make sure people are really absorbing everything here, collecting speeds that are pertinent to the concerns we have. And then also, again, somebody tell me about these apply to a local road when it's really the intensity coming into the neighborhood from the minor arterials that are our concern. And so there's no transition rules in some of those speeds where, they were on the chart. I saw one at 145 feet. So just help me kind of understand how this compares to anything else in Johnston.
Thank you, Patty. Did you want to talk about the turnaround?
I do. I wanted to see if Molly wanted to respond to that at all. I don't know that there was really much for you to respond to there. With regard to the minutes, every time that the Planning Commission considers an item, it comes directly to the council. That's how it's always set up. The P&Z minutes are always going to be draft minutes when they come to you. right after a P and Z meeting. I don't think we represented those as approved minutes. As you know, there's always, if the written minutes aren't available and somebody wants a recording of the meeting, we can provide that to you. That's available. I just want to let the council know that now, so that if you're struggling with the decision and you don't have minutes available, or you want more information about the discussion that was had at the meeting, get in touch with us and we'll give you a recording of the meeting minutes so you can have all the information you need. With regard to the car accident, my understanding was it was, and I might defer to the chief on this if he wants to speak up, but my understanding is it was westbound traffic on Northwest 66 that was turning south onto Northwest Beaver Drive. And there was oncoming traffic coming through the intersection headed east on Northwest Beaver Drive. And it was the responsibility of the left turning traffic to yield. They failed to yield and there was a collision. So it really wasn't traffic turning into this intersection, and it wasn't a speeding issue. Really had nothing to do with this neighborhood. It was traffic turning south onto Beaver Drive that where there was a collision there. Can't give you right now examples of similar intersections. Haven't had time. The question was just posed, and I would need to give that some consideration. And I think. I don't know that there was any questions specifically geared to you, Molly. I'm looking back over my.
There was a question about parking.
If there any concern about 3 lanes leaving the subdivision and 1 lane entering, that was one of Patty's comments. I don't know if there was a question there.
Our traffic count and the operations of the intersection. Have like a southbound left turn lane and 1 lane for a right through movement. And then you basically make it a 3-lane section. How it's striped is.
You're talking about River Bend?
Yeah, River Bend. We could restripe it that way. The traffic study supports the operation. It can work either way. That would be up to you. As far as parking goes, parking is a traffic calming measure. If you have a speeding issue and you have parked cars on a street, that is actually a traffic calming measure. Is there another question?
I'm looking at my list and I don't think there was.
Roger Wheeler, Century 21. I'm representing Homes by Advantage, which is a developer on this project. And we've been here a few times. My marching orders from Homes by Advantage starting a year ago was to be very respectful of the process, including everybody involved with the city and certainly and especially with the neighborhood. And we have worked really hard to do that, starting with a neighborhood meeting last July, so about 10 months ago. There have been lots of conversations that have been very good, very helpful. Again, the developer has conceded in many areas to try to make the neighborhood more comfortable. Obviously, we started with 7 driveways. As a part of the rezoning, the developer agreed to do a development agreement, which that in itself is strange at the rezoning level. But in order to try to work with the neighbors, and in that developer's agreement, agreed no more than 4 driveways. At that point, we could see there was still discomfort, so the developer agreed to pay for a traffic study because the developer is also concerned about safety. The developer's not trying to do anything unsafe. We love the neighborhood. That's why we're developing there. We want our properties to be very desirous and respectful in the neighborhood. We were told which engineering firm the city of Johnston would prefer to use, and the city of Johnston trusts And so we went with that and have been very happy with the product that was given to us by FOTH. That traffic study was made available in February, a little over 2 months ago. It's been out there for a long time. We've had meetings with the neighbors in conjunction with the traffic engineer to address all of these things more than a month ago. I personally have had lots of meetings with the attorney who the neighbors have hired, and many conversations with Patty, who I have a deep respect for. I appreciate her opinions, and I think she's represented the neighborhood very well. So I feel like to try to state that anything is last minute or slow, that feels a bit disingenuous to me. The developer has gone above and beyond in every way to try to work with the process as positively and as organized as possible. Unfortunately, there was a point back in November where we did lose a month. At that point, being respectful of the city council, because there apparently were heavy agendas, and Aaron had asked us to delay twice during that process. And again, we're happy to do that. We want to work with you guys the best that we possibly can. But that brings us here tonight, where we have a traffic study that was done above and beyond, and now the result of that is it's been out for 2 months. Again, it just feels disingenuous to suggest that now we have to delay again. And it is meaningful to the developer. This is a very strange real estate time. You're all watching the news, interest rates, housing inventories, all of those things are meaningful. Developers are in the ground already about a month ago. And as I said, we're now a month behind, and we're asking to go 2 more weeks behind. So I just want to respectfully ask that I feel like the developer has done everything they've been asked to do. And the information has been out there for a long time. The conversations have occurred over and over. The problem from the developer's standpoint is if it looked like there was a reason to move that driveway from 100 to 140, we developed a plan to do that. But the traffic study clearly states that you don't gain anything with that 40 feet. And so where a problem doesn't exist, we're now asking the developer to create problems, because certainly a shared driveway there will create multiple problems, both for the developer and the eventual residents and the city in the long run. So it feels like we're asking the developer to take a situation where there is no problem and create problems. And that doesn't make a lot of sense to us. So I just would respectfully ask, we would love to have you pass this tonight. We would love to be on the phone tomorrow morning, scheduling the things that need to be done so that we could have these properties built out and occupancy in there by the end of this year, because who knows what next year will hold for real estate. So again, I don't want to come off as negative or harsh, but I feel like I just want to, in the most respectful way, say we would really appreciate recognition of what we have done to this point and ask you to allow us to move forward. The information seems to suggest that. There may be a speeding problem, if that's what the neighbors are concerned about. We're very much in tune with let's address that. The next E is education. You don't address that through engineering, you address it through education. If that doesn't work, you address it through enforcement. The police chief can help with that. We want to cooperate with all of that. The engineering is sound, and so we would ask you to approve the plat. Thank you very much for just hearing us. Any questions for me?
On the turnaround.
Turnaround?
Would you, I know we talked, and I think this even came up.
I thought you were asking me to turn around.
No, you're fine. No. The idea of especially for lot, I think it's lot 2, but it's the most southernmost.
Yeah. On the preliminary plat, all we show are those access points onto River Bend. On the site plan, which occurs with city staff, and that's why Aaron has said there won't be another public opportunity to talk about that. We're allowed to address the driveways. And we can add some concrete in the driveway structure that provides both parking and turnaround space. And we are happy to do that and planning to do that. It's just not required on the preliminary plat. If that's something the council would like to add to a motion, we'd be very much cooperative with that.
So that would allow somebody who's, let's say you're the occupant of number lot 2, you could back out into the turnaround and then drive out onto Riverbend, so facing it. So if some traffic is coming north on Beaver, you're going to have a better visual than if you're trying to back out and just that delay.
Yes, that is our intention, and that can be controlled through the site planning process. But I do want to be clear that the neighbors won't be invited to that, but if there's a way tonight to codify that, we're fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, as open as, I think you guys have done a very, very good job of being as open in this process as you can. And I think that the more that can continue, the better, so.
Questions?
Raj, I respect all of the effort that you've put into this on behalf of your client, and I certainly am grateful. I also want to make sure that everyone is heard. I know that to some extent it seems disingenuous that we keep pushing that bar further and further after the first one doesn't seem to get what we want. I'm not here to tell these neighbors that they're going to get what they want. But at the same point in time, to try to arm and equip everyone with the most information that we can to make the best decision we can, and more importantly, the safest decision we can for residents of Johnston and future residents of Johnston, I feel obligated to do so. I do also want to clarify something either between you or between Aaron. In the minutes that were at least posted in draft form, item number 7 says prior to city council approval of the final plat. It lists out 3 different items. Would our resolution and our approval tonight be granting to staff our approval for you to establish that, as opposed to city council itself to see this one more time?
I guess I didn't catch that. But can you said, say that again?
So in the draft version of the minutes that were distributed, under PZ case number 22-08, item 7, in bold, it indicates prior to city council approval of the final plat, A, minimum protection elevation shall be provided, B, construction plans and subsequent final plats shall include critical spot elevations, et cetera, and C. So it's my understanding that we will actually have a chance to address this in a final plat, and public, including these neighbors, will be able to address that?
The final plat will come back to you for approval, but at that point, like I said, we're beyond the point where we can really control where these accesses go. If you want to impose controls on the access locations, tonight's the night to do that. The final plat approval really is just a procedural thing, more or less. By that point in time, a final plat really is just a reiteration of the preliminary plat. And oftentimes on a larger subdivision where there's public improvements required, there's that middle step where there's construction or approval of construction drawings and construction of the public improvements. In this instance, there really aren't substantial public improvements. There's a small section of sanitary sewer that will be public. And so there's not really anything that will change between the final plat stage and now. I don't think at the final plat stage, David, correct me if I'm wrong, would it be appropriate to try to impose limitations on the access spacing at the final plat stage? Okay.
Hi, can you hear my question?
I don't know if that answered your question.
To some extent, it concerns me though, because you had led off in our discussion by saying that preliminary plats usually don't even include those types of entrance or access points. And yet now you're saying in final, we wouldn't be able to change those.
The access locations for each of these lots will be depicted on a site plan that it's submitted to our building department and it's reviewed by our building department staff.
Okay.
So they're looking at the access locations and making sure that they meet spacing requirements. And they're going to fall back on city code. So if you want to impose restrictions above and beyond what city code allows, now's the time to do it.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
yeah.
But aren't the access points depicted
They are shown there.
on this site, on what we have in front of us?
And the reason they're shown there, they're the shared access drives, they're gonna be on the property line because they're shared accesses. So they've depicted where each of the bi-attached homes come together. There's a shared access
Kind
to
of
the
a wide
lots, yeah.
alley kind of a deal.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Aaron? Or for the applicant or for Molly? We still have several items we need to get to tonight, so. Do we have a motion?
Yes, Mayor, I move to table Resolution 22-102.
Do we have a second? Motion fails for lack of a second. Do we have any other motions?
I'll move approval of Resolution 22-102.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I guess I just like, I mean, I think, this is a judgment call, and this is not an easy issue. And I think that the concerns that we've heard from the neighbors they feel those concerns very strongly. But I think also I think one of the challenges we have as elected officials is just because somebody has a concern about an issue, then you have to determine does the data support that concern? And it is a little bit of a gray area because it is a very unique situation. And I think Patty brought up a very good point that you have this really unique situation where you have 3 very significant roads, and then the 4th one is going into a neighborhood. And I can think of different neighborhoods that access off of 86th Street, but they don't necessarily have traffic dumping right into it. So it is a unique area, and that's kind of the situations we have to kind of deal with. But I also feel like that the 100 feet is adequate in this situation. So that's why I'm comfortable supporting this today.
I would like to make a comment. I'm going to support this too. There is an intersection that is somewhat similar in Johnston. It's Ashton Drive and Northwest 100th Street. And I'm not in favor. I think there's about 50 feet between 100th Street and this first driveway. I'm only pointing that out because of Patty's request to find a similar location. And I don't much appreciate the 50 feet that's there, but we do have one in Johnston that I could find. I appreciate all the conversation that has gone on. I do feel that the builder deserves an answer tonight, and that's why I'm going to proceed to vote for it.
I would like to weigh in. I will not be voting in favor of this. For many of the reasons that I already discussed. I understand that we need to weigh the data that's there. I am in no way casting aspersions upon the traffic study that was done, and I am grateful for our developer to do so. I want data to be able to make everyone feel that they are treated fairly, that they are listened to and spoken with respect, and also that we do take into account any and all the safety concerns that are there. I don't feel like these neighbors are really trying to string this out just for the sake of stringing it out. I could be wrong. The reality of this, though, is that I do believe that while we made great progress in kind of demonstrating a model of development and neighborhood, I begin to question whether or not it was just to go through the actions. Was it really intended to try to find a true solution? Or was it intended instead just to go through the actions because you knew what was going to happen? That's not fair for anyone. And so consequently, tonight, because we can't get the data we need, because we can't thoroughly all make a decision based on the information that was presented with an adequate amount of time, I will be voting against it.
Any other discussion?
I'd just like to say, I think this developer has indicated incredibly high level of cooperation. And I think to suggest that they are not acting in good faith tonight is troubling. And I'm concerned that that suggestion was made and frustrated by it, because I think the frustration I think we have is sort of this weird timing thing. And I think Patty made a really good point. You have this really unique situation where you have a P&Z meeting on a Monday, and then it's Good Friday, and then it's Easter weekend is kind of built into it. These are all things that I think are kind of cause us, we were sort of short-staffed at the P&Z meeting, so generating the minutes and all that type of stuff took time. That's not the developer's fault. And so to raise concerns about the actions the developer has taken, I think that that's inappropriate.
I respect that.
Any other discussion?
I've been weighing on this. I can't make a decision, a very good decision here, but we have had this discussion for a long time now, and I don't think everybody will get what they want. Everybody will not get everything they want. So there's just some kind of a compromise we need to work on. So at this point, we have done a good traffic study on this, and I believe Molly is a good professional and she has a good reputation on traffic conditions and work on that. So I presume she's done a good study on that. So having said that, and I hear all the residents' concerns as well about 50 feet, 100 feet, 200 feet and all this. I totally hear that, and I think the data supports what Molly's data supports, that the traffic could be properly maintained and maybe the traffic lights could be properly set on a different timings, or slow it down or speed it down, or whatever that can be done. Traffic timings can be set. I think traffic can be controlled up there rather than like thinking about stopping distances and all. I think we can do a better job at controlling the traffic using traffic lights and better stop signs and things like that. And more signs on the intersection at the 66th and Riverbend, or on the Riverbend, saying we put more signs saying be careful or something like that. It is a more better prospect than trying to stop the whole development. So it's something that I think we should probably agree on. Everybody will not get everything they want, so there should be some kind of a work compromise on that. So having said that, I'll wait until the last minute if I yes or no on this.
Any further discussion?
Okay. I'm going to support it because I think we have all the information in front of us. We've had the information in front of us. There's so many variables that aren't being discussed. What if it's snowed? What if there's ice on the road? What if it's cloudy? What if it's windy? There's so many what ifs. And the facts that we've been presented by the expert, I can't see why not.
Any further discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second. Cindy, vote please.
Start with Councilmember Reddy. Councilmember Evans?
Ooh, me? Yeah.
Martin?
Yes.
Reddy?
I'll abstain.
Burkhart?
No.
Hope?
Yes.
Yeah. The vote was 3-1 and 1. So the motion passed. We have additional items on the agenda. Thank you all for being here this evening and sharing your concerns and comments with us. Really appreciate it. Item 7D, consider resolution number 22-103, approving the preliminary plat site plans for courtyards at Windsor. Aaron, is that you again?
Caliber,
Can you make
Iowa.
this one just a little shorter?
I'll try. Caliber, Iowa LLC has submitted a preliminary plat depicting the construction of 82 detached association homes over 22 acres on the south side of Windsor Parkway in the Windsor Office Park. And the project will be known as Courtyards at Windsor. The subject property is there on the overhead in red. And the development is served by private streets, and residents will have access to a clubhouse and pool area. And Cindy, when you get a chance, will you open up the preliminary plat? And in fact, maybe open up my staff report. Yeah. We're going to go with the plat drawings there. It'll be down several pages. As I stated, okay, it'll be one of my attachments, so how about this one right here? That works great. As I stated earlier, the development is served by private streets. It's also served by private water and sanitary sewer, except for a portion of sanitary sewer that lies under this roadway here. It'll be a public sanitary sewer main because it is being extended to the property line to serve the development to the south of this one. Everything else will be private except for that. A 20-foot buffer is required to the south and the west. A 30-foot buffer is required to the east, with 15 feet of the buffer to be installed by each adjoining landowner. And a 20-foot buffer is required between the clubhouse and north adjacent commercial areas on the opposite side of Windsor Parkway. All the buffers meet our buffer planning requirements, and with the south and west buffer areas taking advantage of some existing tree growth. 5-foot sidewalks will be provided on one side of the private drives in this development, and that sidewalk will be constructed at the back of curb along the private streets, excuse me. There will be a 10-foot public trail that will be installed by the developer along the south side of Windsor Parkway. There is a Parkland dedication requirement payable prior to approval of the final plat. In this instance, based on 82 units, the required value of that Parkland requirement is $34,210.40. Stormwater will be accommodated in 3 wet bottom detention basins. 2 are at the center of the site and 1 is in the northeast corner of the site. With regard to architecture for the clubhouse, maybe you could open up the building elevations. Our code requires at least 75% of the wall area exhibit materials consisting of a combination of brick, architectural concrete panels, textured concrete block, or architectural steel or stone panels. Let's see. And the elevations submitted indicate architectural materials for the clubhouse will be stone and horizontal lap siding. While the siding material is not listed on the elevations, the applicant has informed me it will be fiber cement siding. They said there will not be any vinyl siding used on the entire site. I did ask for a condition of approval, asking them to revise the building elevations to indicate that the siding material will be fiber cement. And the combination of materials they propose on the clubhouse does meet the architectural requirements. In the interest of keeping that short, did I not give you a good, there you go, there's the elevation. Elevation should be opening shortly. If you have any questions for me, I can answer those now. Otherwise, the applicant's design engineer is waiting here. He's the only person left in the audience. Should you have any questions for him?
What about Andrew?
There's the clubhouse there.
Does council have any questions for Aaron?
So Aaron, I know when we discussed this item at the rezoning, there was the trail that runs along the south side of Windsor, and there was also some discussion of a potential trail along kind of the east edge.
At the time, yeah, we were asking for 2 things, and that was for this roadway to extend through to the south adjacent subdivision to provide a through access, and also for there to be a public trail along that road to connect back up to here. And both of those things at the rezoning stage voted down.
Okay,
Yeah,
I knew that
eliminated.
the road extension,
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if we had resolved the. Okay.
Yeah, and at the time, we talked about, okay, so does that mean that we push the road extension onto the east adjacent property? And the council made it pretty clear that that wasn't their desire to do so. And I believe that was maybe the direction of the trail as well.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't remember losing the trail connection to that southern neighborhood, having that discussion. I
don't remember it being resolved.
Yeah, I don't.
And perhaps it got pushed off to the east adjacent property.
I'm comfortable with it not being, because I know that this sort of then ties into what happens to kind of really with the east adjoining property and potentially to the south. To me, I'm perfectly fine without the internal trail in the neighborhood the way it's depicted here. Because to a certain extent, it's a little bit of a trail to nowhere, right?
The trail, if we were to
If
require
there was
one
a
to
trail,
stay.
right, that goes there, and then you get into some pretty heavily wooded area, and then you gotta, to connect it up to that Greenwood Trail, it's, your tree impact is a little, I think, impact is concerning, so I'm glad to not see it here, so.
So do you not see I wish we had a larger aerial, because there's the neighboring Windsor Drive, what is it? The one to the south, there's a road.
Well, it's
Yeah.
I've got the street.
Northwest Windsor Drive.
Right.
So not even a sidewalk connection? We're not going to propose that. I'm just asking the question.
No, because I don't even know that at the end of the day, that road is going to, I'm not sure.
I know, I understand that the road doesn't make the connection. I'm just thinking about those neighborhoods and the kids. I can see what you're saying about that just leads it into the woods where we haven't got another plat, that will come up later when that piece of, yes, that property there is developed, and then we'll deal with the sidewalk connections through those areas. Is that what we're saying?
That's my memory.
Okay, so is there something we need to put onto the development saying if at some time in the future we want a sidewalk connection from this piece of road that goes north to south into this future, that they'll put it in? Can we ask for that? If you go to the plot, if you go to the plot map between units 12 and 11 on the bottom, which would be the southeast corner, do we have to state that sometime in the future we may request that there be a sidewalk connection to future trail system?
You could request a sidewalk connection if you choose to.
That's what I'm saying.
I guess as long as there's no, in essence, it's just a sort of a reserving. There reserves a requirement that if there is a trail, if the sidewalk is coming up from the south, that they would now then have to extend their sidewalk all the way to their property.
Right, if as these other two properties develop, we reserve the right to
You would
ask
also,
them to make a connection to those other ones.
you would also probably need to ask for an easement to allow for the public to walk on that sidewalk.
Because everything's private inside.
Yes, it's
this
private, yeah.
Yep. I think it's good planning. I would be interested in that.
So Aaron, when you say this is private, so that means this whole thing, the streets in there and everything?
Private streets, private sanitary sewer, meaning if something breaks in there, it's their responsibility to fix it.
So we don't have to worry about snow removal. If
Correct.
somebody's parked in somebody's driveway or somebody has his own business, too many people come.
Well, home business would fall under our purview, but no, the snow removal would be
I
private.
can't believe you try to complicate things, Jim.
Just wanted to ask.
It's just like you.
Aaron, there is an easement, if you head west, that corner of Summit Drive and 92nd, of which this land would butt up, there currently is an easement for a trail. Are you aware of that?
Help me out again, where?
So that corner, yep, right where that cursor is, there is an easement there? Or is that city-owned, in fact, that sliver?
That was the intent to connect Summit to whatever was going to happen there.
Okay.
Well, it makes sense. Won't there be some children in this area that want to get to the school?
Well, based on the planned development, I don't believe there will be children, at least.
Generally, I think it's not age restricted, but I believe their target market, they said, is 55 and up.
Is this green space in the middle a park? I saw that it was gonna have no mow.
There are some trails for like walking paths through their, a dog exercise area type situation.
But not like an active play area park.
No, and again, because it's really, the product is geared toward an older market. But there is that kind of, that recreational component, the trails through the center of the site, and also they have a clubhouse with pool area there for recreational amenities.
So, I'm gonna ask, I looked for the landscaping plan. I found this plan, but it doesn't say what is what. Is there a detailed landscape plan somewhere?
Yeah, there's a full site plan, because this site plan is how many pages, Josh? It was more than that, but I thought, I just included the select few pages there. The full site plan is included as an attachment, and that's where you would have found the landscape
Okay.
plan. How many pages are there, Cindy? I guess maybe it is only 15 pages, but 3.
And that has the plant list, not just the
The plant list is
list of
included in there.
trees. I didn't see it, so let me keep looking.
There. Oh, she went past. There you go.
Page 32, Councilmember.
32, it's the last one on the thing. Okay, thank you.
So there is 32 pages.
Yeah.
I didn't want to include 32 pages as an attachment to the staff report, but I included it as a separate attachment to the board docs, the full site plan. It gets confusing when the pages are divided in sections and you're only looking at a
quarter
of a view.
Other questions for Aaron? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the council on this item? If there isn't any further questions, do we have a motion to approve resolution number 22-103?
I will motion to approve with the added requirement that we have the developer at city request provide an access sidewalk to trails to the south and to the west if they are installed in the future. I don't know. Tom does a better job of making these.
But you want to
Do you want
extend
to
the
comment on that?
sidewalk. You're wanting them to, you're requiring them to extend the sidewalk
Connection.
to the property line if development to the south has a sidewalk coming up to meet that point.
What he said.
So really quick, Josh Trickstead, Civil Design Advantage, 4121 Northwest Urbandale Drive, Urbandale, Iowa. First, the applicant would prefer not to have that since this is a privately held street. They just don't want public access to go through there. I mean, it wouldn't be a deal killer, but I just want to stress that. Then the easement had to be granted. I think at the time of rezoning, that was part of the reason they just didn't want these neighborhoods connected, just because it just allow more drive-through traffic and other pedestrian traffic. The only other thing I'd state about the sidewalk is there is probably going to be a topography challenge just based off of that what's gonna happen on the existing Windsor Drive will be probably a cul-de-sac. That cul-de-sac will probably sit 10, 15 feet in the air compared to this private street.
Well, and if there was a cul-de-sac, then there would not be a sidewalk extension. correct?
Exactly,
So,
and
I
most
mean,
neighborhoods aren't probably gonna want a sidewalk between two lots, just because that's usually unattractive too. At least to those two owners of that home, of those homes.
Yeah.
So I guess I wouldn't say that there would be, if the applicant isn't against it, but the preference would be not to have it. However, that's the way the council would like to proceed. I just want to state those, I guess, the topography, the likelihood of a cul-de-sac being at Windsor Drive, there probably really won't be a sidewalk connection.
I get what the applicant probably wants. He doesn't want the neighbors walking their dogs through the site. He doesn't want kids running through backyards. I get all that, but then I'm against not connecting sidewalks to sidewalks so you can get through town. We did take away a whole road.
I know, and that's exactly why I
We
stated.
violated
we
our
took a road
comprehensive
away.
plan for you.
We're gonna have 5 feet of concrete
No,
up and over a berm.
I'm just stating the facts of, it's gonna be a cul-de-sac and it would be a side yard sidewalk, and that cul-de-sac will probably be 10 feet in the air. So just the topography to get down to this street sidewalk that's being constructed might not be actually physical, to be able to physically do that and make it a compliant, ADA compliant sidewalk.
Mhm.
That's all I'm stating.
I hear you.
I think I'm comfortable sort of leaving it at, sort of, you should be aware.
Yeah, exactly.
That if at some point a street comes into, or there's a pretty close residential lot being built to the south edge of your property in that corner, we will come back and expect that the sidewalk gets connected to it.
And to the west,
Yeah, the west, yeah.
for
We'll get-
sure.
The west will be, I guess with the preliminary plat and the layout that we're showing, the west is a little bit more impractical because there's not room between those lots.
Yeah, I know we've,
You had to pull that
Yeah.
back. And I guess it'd be scrolled to that southwest.
That's all I got.
I believe it's this lot here. The allowance of these homes, we put 11 feet separation between each home.
so is there not an ability to put the trail behind those? You have those two townhomes that are kind of in the backyard
So
of
you're
it.
saying sneak them between them?
No, I'm not
Oh.
saying that at all.
Okay, just sneak them around?
I'm not gonna touch the screen.
You should get a pointer like Aaron. That was impressive.
Yep.
I think there is in some way envisioned potentially in a trail that could come through here, but I don't know how it gets.
It can't get from there to
Yeah,
Oak
I
Ridge.
don't know how
I think it needs to
we
get to
talked
the
about it.
interior area.
Yeah.
This is the time to make it happen.
I think that initially, when they established this office park, and there was talk about putting a park in this area, maybe that's why this void was left to provide access to that park. I don't know that this was really intended to get a full connection down to the trail.
Mm-mm.
Really, it was just intended to access the park that was going to be here.
Well, I would ask Councilman Burkhart what he thinks, since he lives very close to that area. Do you think that we need to have a connection on this west side in addition?
I like the idea of a west connection. However, I don't know where it goes. I think it would be very advantageous, since I watched a school-age student just last Friday cut through backyards to get onto Oak Ridge, as opposed to going all the way out and around. However, having said that, like I said, I don't know if we can get easements to be able to get anywhere close to that interior portion. I am very comfortable with asking for it on the west side. on the southeast component, quite frankly, I'd rather just take that up on development of the next eastern parcel as well as the south parcel, that a trail would go on that side.
So you're saying we don't need a sidewalk connection from the next street over to the west?
That would be my, from the next street over to the west.
Yeah, it's the,
Summit, and
It's actually, yeah, it's,
92nd Court.
I don't know where it goes.
The one up north.
From this knuckle right through there.
Which I know that's what was planned. I'd love to take advantage of it. I don't know how to do it.
my understanding, and this is based on a discussion that we had at an economic development ad hoc meeting, is there is some attempt to do a trail that runs, it's very much at the very, 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 very preliminary phase, but it would accomplish what I think you're trying to accomplish, Rhonda, but it's on a different pathway.
Okay.
It goes south of this neighborhood, so, or actually probably runs right along the border of it, so.
I think we're losing an opportunity here. But I will defer to my council mates if no one else thinks that that's a problem, as long as we get one in the southeast corner. Or at least a acknowledgement of there could be a future request to connect a sidewalk of 5 feet wide over hill and dale.
Private sidewalk is being constructed.
Runs along the top of the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he doesn't.
Move this forward.
So we have a motion to approve resolution number 22-103. Do we have a second?
Second.
Can I clarify, does it have the requirement for the sidewalk or doesn't have the requirement?
There was just an acknowledgement that there may be a request in the future.
Not part of the motion. Okay, thank you.
Who made the
We have a
motion?
motion? Do we have a
Yeah, who
second?
made the motion?
You
Did I
made the
make
motion, Councilmember Martin.
Oh, well, then I can't second it.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
I think I'm getting
Motion
punchy.
passed. 7E, consider a waiver consent letter for Allers Law Firm to review the draft 28E agreement for Central Iowa Waterworks.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Cindy, vote please. Discussion, Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Evans,
Yep.
Martin,
Aye.
Ready,
Yes.
Last item, consider approval of claims in the amount of $1,451,102.41. Do we have a motion?
I move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Cindy, vote please.
Cope,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yeah.
Ready,
Yes.
Burkhart.
Yes.
Anything else for the good of the order? Seeing none, we are adjourned.
I wanted to go through every penny.
Probably put down, I didn't think it was a fair